Hello there guys, Hirosaki here. This story is all about what if Naruto had the ability to be invisible. An accident bestows a completely new Kekkai Genkai on an orphan boy, a blood limit that nobody could have foreseen. Please like and subscribe to this channel before we begin and check the description box for the author of this great storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 26. Wake up. Naruto exhaled sharply as Hanabi landed on him. Wake up. Hanabi half shouted. It's the finals today, you don't want to be late. The matches do not begin until 1 o'clock. Niji said from the door, a slight smirk on his face as he watched his youngest cousin bounce up and down in a very un-Hyuga way. I think that they have enough time to get washed, dressed and fed before then. Don't you have lessons today? Hinata asked groggily and Hanabi shook her head. Nope. I'm going to watch you both win. It's a knockout competition, Hanabi. Hinata said as she sat up and rubbed the sleep out of her eyes. Only one person can win. Hanabi shrugged as she leapt off the bed and scampered off. Naruto sighed dramatically. Remind me again why we put up with her. Hinata fought hard to not giggle as she swatted Naruto, and then reached for the chest that held her lovingly folded battle kimono. At long last, she had a reason to wear her graduation gift. Good morning. Hayashi said as the duo entered while beside him, Hitomi smiled. Good morning, Hayashi-sama, Hitomi-sen / good morning, father, mother. Mother. Both teens replied at the same time. Sit, eat. Hayashi said, motioning to the table which was laden with food. Hinata's eyes widened and she seemed to blur, ending up with a plate stacked high with cinnamon buns. Ignoring Hinata's moans of pleasure as she consumed her bounty, Hayashi turned his attention to Naruto. I trust that you are both prepared for the finals? We are. Naruto nodded. I heard that Hinata's managed to complete that 64 palms protection move of hers, but I haven't seen it yet. Gonna be quite an obstacle. It is rather impressive. Hayashi noted, causing Hitomi to smother a giggle. I am glad that she developed it before she became a Urei, otherwise the Hyuga clan would have failed to gain a powerful new technique. Lord Hayashi, your guests have arrived. Show them in. Hayashi responded and the branch member stepped out of the way, allowing the two men through. Itachi-san. Asuma-san. Lord Hayashi. Both men said as they bowed, then Hayashi motioned for them to sit. My father sends his greetings and respects and I carry a letter to Naruto from my cousin. Itachi said as he seated himself. As I am taking the position of Hokage, father is resigning from his position as advisor in order to prevent the Uchiha from being overrepresented, although he will still head the clan and will remain on the council. I intend to ask Aburame Shibi to become my newest advisor once I have accepted the hat. An interesting choice. Hayashi mused. I would have expected Inuzuka Tsume to be the leading contender. Since I will be marrying her daughter the day after I accept the hat, it could be seen as granting the Inuzuka too much political power. Itachi said, then he grimaced. I am finding myself disliking politics more and more. Dad hates it too. Asuma noted and Naruto tilted his head. Asuma-san, not that you are unwelcome, but why are you here? Because my academy team failed my test big time, so I'm getting a better one. Asuma smiled. I'm going to be the new sensei for your team, assuming that only one of you gets promoted. Means that I can help you hone that wind affinity of yours. And should both Hinata Haim and I get promoted? Naruto asked, causing Asuma to grin. I still get Kiba, but get to cherry-pick any current non-assigned genin to rebuild the team. He said. I was considering having that Kabuto kid, having a medic on the team is a real boost on missions lasting over a week. And anyone who has as much bad luck as him, well, the exams aren't the only way to get promoted. Field promotions. Hinata nodded. Any ninja on an assignment of B rank or above may be promoted one rank by a ninja 2 or more ranks above them, said promotions must however be confirmed by the Hokage, or at least 3 members of the council. Almost word for word what the regulations say. Asuma marveled. Brilliant. Hinata blushed at the praise, ducking her head to try and hide it. Hinata, I've been making a few queries. Asuma said. You've encountered Haku before. Hinata blinked a few times. I have? The one who rescued Zabuza from Itachi? Oh. I was rather distracted at the time. As was I. Itachi admitted. Have you discovered Haku's gender? You don't know? Asuma asked, then he frowned as he thought through the things he'd heard. Actually, I've heard Haku referred to as both a boy and a girl. Hinata, during your match, can you find out, please? Zabuza glared at the trio before him. All right. You know our enemies, you know your own skills. Suigetsu, make damn sure you use that water wisely. I sealed over 50,000 gallons into the inner seals, and if you break it, I won't be happy. Suigetsu nodded, one hand stroking the container on his back, a container that looked almost identical to the one carried by Gaara, except that it was made from a white ceramic and had a large tap, which looked more like a pipe valve, set into the base. Haku, don't mess around, hold back, or give your opponent any openings. Suigetsu will leave his gourd in the feld, use it to get a quick win. Hi, Zabuza-sama. Chojuro, you are being reassigned. May arrived last night with that pansy AO. You're going to be her new bodyguard for the tournament. Best behavior, otherwise it'll be another full contact all-day sparring session with me. Got it? Chojuro nodded almost frantically. Good. Let's go. Today, you shall both have a chance to display your flames of youth. Guy exulted. Your courage and youthful spirits will help you to overcome any obstacle in your path. Niji resisted the urge to roll his eyes as Guy continued his speech. Although he had missed out this time, his research into Suigetsu's clan had revealed several weaknesses that he wished he had known about beforehand. Although it was too late for him, he had made sure that both Lee and Tenten had been informed. And without further ado, let us depart. Niji exchanged glances with his teammates before they followed their oddly childlike sensei to the arena. Although he had been denied a chance to show his skills, he would support his teammates. No. He would support his friends. Niji smiled. The day is here, nice and bright / the crowds they come to watch you fight. You're personifying Kumo's pride / that's the truth, I have not lied. Stand tall, stand proud and wield your blade / ensure your enemies are dismayed. So stride forth and win your fights / and you'll be chunin by tonight. Word. Karui sulked to one side, one hand absently stroking her tunic as if to check that it hadn't suddenly been shredded. Good luck with your match, Samui. Omoi said, then he swallowed nervously. Don't get yourself killed, because if you do, I'll... Karui lowered her hand and glared at her teammate. Stop it. Time for you both to put on a show / to the Chunin Stadium we must now go. Be wrapped and the 3 genin followed their sensei towards the distant amphitheater. Gaara opened his eyes as the final few loose grains of sand melded into the surface of his gourd. Rising, he paused to run his hand over his modified seal in what had become an almost habitual gesture. He was still going to have words with Lady Chiyo when he returned though. Her incompetence had almost ruined his ability to enjoy life. A clattering noise caused him to turn as Kankuro entered the dining room, carried on the back of his favorite puppet. A scroll tucked away held his second puppet, and he was rather proud of already being able to control 2 at once. The fact that Chiyo could control 10 was almost immaterial. After all, she still had a century or so of experience with puppets. Shame that it didn't extend to seals. A slight noise alerted him to Temari's entry, and he turned to face her. It is a shame that you are not competing. He offered and Temari blinked. Thanks. Hey, let's go. Kankuro yelled from the doorway. We got fights to win. Temari nodded, then she moved closer to Gaara. Father will be there. He arrived last night. Gaara nodded, his face expressionless. His father. The architect of his burden. Perhaps he should. No. He would fight for Suna. The fact that the man who sired him let it was merely an unfortunate problem. He followed his siblings out of the door. Sarutobi Hiruzen eased his aching body onto the chair reserved for the head of the Sarutobi clan, and looked across at the Kage box where acting Hokage Uchiha Itachi, who was going to become the Hokage in truth as part of the Chunin exam, had just finished welcoming the other 3 Kages, each of whom was moving to their own seats. The Reikage was flanked by Niyujito, one of the 2 Jinchuriki of Kyumo, and a white-haired swordsman who had a tattoo for lightning on his shoulder. Terumi Mei, the Mizukage, was flanked by Ao and Chojuro, making her the only Kage with a genin as one of her bodyguards, whilst the Kazekage was flanked by 2 of his jonin, Otokes and Iseigo if Hiruzen remembered his briefings correctly. Itachi returned to his own seat with Asuma and Kakashi acting as his own guards. As the contestants filed onto the field, taking their positions in front of the proctor, Hiruzen glanced up, his eyes homing in on one of the ANBU who was using sign language to indicate that the patrolling ninja reported no sign of any enemy movements. Satisfied, Hiruzen returned his gaze to the field. This would be the first Chunin exams in over a decade that he had not overseen, and he would be damned if he didn't take this opportunity to enjoy them with his grandson. Speaking of, Hiruzen accepted the bag of popcorn and held it long enough for Konohamaru to scramble into the chair next to his. It's Hinata boss and Roto boss. Konohamaru cheered as he spotted 2 of the figures. Yeah. Hiruzen smiled at his grandson, then turned his attention back to the arena. He was going to enjoy this. Hayashi sat in the only chair with armrests in the Hyuga box, 30 members of the Hyuga clan, including his heiress, and the summoned clone of Kurama in her arms, accompanying him. On the other side of the Kage box, he could see Fugaka sat on a similar chair in the Uchiha box, a dozen Uchiha with him, including his wife and his younger son. Not many Uchiha today. Hizashi noted quietly and Hayashi nodded slightly. Most of them volunteered to help set up the celebration in the Uchiha sector. They are celebrating the ascension of one of their own to the position of Hokage. Chusa mentioned that the Akamichi bakeries have been working flat out for the past week to supply the food. That is a lot of food. Hizashi finally managed. We have an invitation as well, but I intend to attend only briefly. Hayashi said. It is odd, having served as advisor alongside him. I think I actually respect him now. Although I would not call him friend, I find it hard to come up with another word to describe our relationship. I feel certain that you will find the word you seek sometime, brother. Hayashi could almost hear the smirk in Hizashi's voice. Uchiha Fugaku glanced at the Kage box and smirked at the sight of his son exchanging words with the Mizukage. Below the Kage box, Sarutobi Asuma had joined the other Jonin sensei whose Jinin were competing and was talking with Sabuza. From the few words he could lip read, they were discussing the merits of various types of blades. Sir. Fugaku nodded in acknowledgement to Shursui, who was waiting for his cue to appear in the arena, and then across to where Naori was sat by the entrance to the box. All of the loyal Uchiha no Mangekyo were in the arena, and although Fugaku sometimes envied their incredible abilities, he had no desire to undergo the incredible loss that was required to gain the powers. Although Itachi had done the impossible and achieved it without losing anyone. And so, it begins. Fugaku mused, then he almost facepalmed as Shursui chuckled. I know, pretentious. Well, Shusui laughed, we are Uchiha. Pretentious is what we do. In a Genjutsu-shielded area atop the Hokage mountain, a group of 8 figures wearing black cloaks with red clouds stood on the lip of the cliff, watching over the hidden village. Thank you for pointing out the gaps in the detection array. Orochimaru said quietly, earning a glance from one of the 6 with the Rinnegan. I had planned on using large summons outside the village to break the walls, using them inside will do far more damage. But you still wish to send your minions against the Uchiha rather than the Hyuga? The leader said slowly. Orochimaru shrugged. I know that they are a major threat and thus need taking down quickly, but... Did you ever consider what a Byakugan might do for you? Orochimaru froze, his face blank, then a long, slow smirk spread across his face. It could prove very useful for my research, but I won't give up on my desire for the Sharingan. I do not expect you to. Pain replied, then he glanced at the Uchiha standing just behind them. Remember what your mission is. To kill any Uchiha who survives your first strike. Naka smirked, his eyes flaring briefly into the Mangekyo. I do not want any survivors. Of course, Pain-sama. Naka acknowledged, then he grinned evilly. This will be fun. Itachi stood and stepped forwards, causing the crowd's noise to diminish. Checking that he was wearing the seal-engraved microphone, and it was turned on, he started to speak, his words echoing across the arena. Good afternoon. At noon, I had the honor of being appointed as Hokage, making this my first official duty. Before me are 10 people who have the capability and desire to seek promotion. They are here before us to prove that they are worthy of the rank of Chunin. Today, we will see them showing us their skills and abilities in a series of fights which will hopefully entertain and educate us. From Kirigakure, we are honored to have Hozuki Suigetsu and Yuki Haku, 2 of the new generation of the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist. Representing Konohagakure are Higurushi Tenten, Hyuga Hinata, Rock Lee and Urei Rudo. Visiting us from Kumogakure are Omoi and Samui, while representing our allies of Sunagakure are the siblings Gaara and Kankuro, children of the Kazekage. These 10 have overcome many obstacles to reach this place. Itachi paused as a wave of cheering and applause rose from the audience. The line of genin looked up at the raised seats as the noise crested and slowly subsided. And now, may I present our proctor for this stage, Uchiha Shursui. My name is Uchiha Shursui, sometimes called Shursui no Shunshin. The new arrival said as he materialized in front of the genin, pitching his voice, so that it could be easily picked up by the sound-magnifying seals. I am the proctor for this stage and as such, I have final say in what happens. You only fight when I tell you to, and when I say to stop, you will stop. If you don't, I will use any means I deem necessary, including lethal force if needed. If I have to do that, you can safely assume you have failed and thus will not be promoted. The deadpan delivery of the final line caused a ripple of laughter through the audience, especially amongst the shinobi sections. Shursui waited for the noise to subside before continuing. I am one of the fastest people around, so if I deem it necessary to remove someone before an attack hits, they will find themselves moved to safety. Ma'am, I can move faster. Naruto drawled and Hinata gave him a shocked look. Shursui seemed to vanish, appearing just behind Naruto. Are you sure about that? Yes, I am. Naruto said from where he had appeared behind Shursui, causing a large number of gasps from the audience. I don't think so. Shursui responded from behind Naruto. But I do. Naruto replied from behind Shursui. As the duo started to lap the field by appearing behind each other, Hinata briefly activated her Byakugan and fought the urge to facepalm as she watched the line of invisible clones sequentially Kawarimi with Naruto, giving the impression that he was matching Shursui Shunshin for Shunshin. After 2 laps, the pair spiraled inwards, reappearing in the exact spots that they had started from, causing a round of laughing applause from the audience. Shursui waited for the noise to die down before continuing. As you probably remember, your matches are as follows. Omoi vs Tenten first, then Kankuro and Ruto. Lee and Samui are third, Gaara and Suigetsu are fourth, and then Hinata and Haku finish the first round. After that, the 6th match will be the winner of the first match and the winner of the second, then 7th is the winner of the third and the winner of the fourth. The winner of the 5th will fight the winner of the 6th with the winner of that match fighting the winner of the 7th. I remind you that you do not need to win to be promoted, although it will help. The judges are looking for more than simple fighting skills. As the first match is between Omoi and Tenten, please could all the other contestants make their way to the waiting area. As they turned to go, Naruto paused by the bun-haired girl's side. Good luck, Tenten. Thanks. Tenten replied. Good luck, Tenten-san. Thanks, Hinata. YOSH. Let your flames of youth guide you to victory. Thanks, Lee. Stifling their laughter, Hinata and Naruto quickly walked across the arena floor to the doorway that led up to the contestants' box. Who do you think will win? Hinata asked and Naruto shrugged. I'm not certain. Hinata said slowly. Omoi knows how to use his Raiton, and while Tenten has the same affinity, she has never really developed it. That would put her at a disadvantage, especially if he uses her wires against her. Naruto agreed as they emerged out of the top of the stairway. Have you made plans for your match against Haku? I have. Hinata nodded, then she sighed. I don't know how much good they'll do though. I believe in you. Naruto said and Hinata smiled even as she blushed at the sincerity of his voice. Oh, what was all that about with you and Shursui? Hinata suddenly asked and Naruto chuckled. Well, you remember the letter that Itachi was carrying for me this morning. Tenten looked across at her opponent who was watching her with a controlled expression. Carefully shifting her weight, she checked that her scrolls were still in their holsters and her tanto sheathed across her back even as Omoi placed one hand on the hilt of his sword. The first match between Tenten of Konohagakure and Omoi of Kumogakure. Shursui announced from one side. Fight. Chapter 27. Tenten looked across at her opponent who was watching her with a controlled expression. Carefully shifting her weight, she checked that her scrolls were still in their holsters and her tanto sheathed across her back even as Omoi placed one hand on the hilt of his sword. The first match between Tenten of Konohagakure and Omoi of Kumogakure. Shursui announced from one side. Fight. Omoi unsheathed his sword in a flowing motion, then quickly used it to deflect the two of the trio of kunai that Tenten had launched at him, with the third whistling so close to him that it caused a few strands of his white hair to drift towards the ground. Even as he protected himself, Tenten leapt backwards, opening the range in order to let her use her best techniques. Interesting. Omoi mused, rolling his lollipop from one side of his mouth to the other. Tenten ignored his comment as she pulled out a small scroll, unrolling it with a snap of her wrist and unsealing the weapons within. Her hands seemed to flicker and Omoi leapt backwards, deflecting several of the shuriken which curved in 3 different paths through the space he had been standing. The flickering projectiles then altered course and Omoi's eyes widened just as the blades slammed into him, knocking him off his feet. Shit! Tenten cursed as Omoi briefly vanished into a cloud of smoke, and a log riddled with shuriken landed in his stead. Spinning round, she paused as she saw her opponent emerge from the copse of trees, then her eyes narrowed as a second Omoi appeared and the two of them started to run towards her, swords ready to parry. Twin Rising Dragons! Tenten shouted as she pulled out her special scrolls and slammed them onto the ground before channeling chakra into her legs and leaping vertically even as she reached out to the spiraling scrolls to unseal the weapons within. Both Omois moved closer to each other and began parrying as Tenten unleashed all her projectiles at them, then one of them missed a kunai and exploded in a cloud of smoke, revealing itself to have been a shadow clone. Found you! Tenten grinned as she refocused and the rain of weapons briefly increased before the remaining Omoi also dispersed. What the hell? Tenten gasped as she landed. That were both clones? Then where the... A brief feeling on unease was her only warning, but it was enough to send her diving forwards as a blade stabbed through the space that her shoulder had occupied. Spinning round, Tenten found herself looking at the incoming blade. Clang! Omoi's eyes widened as his thrust was deflected and he leapt backwards, looking at the new weapon in Tenten's hands. What is that thing? Tenten grinned as she stepped forwards, the short truncheon in her hands spinning while the weighted chains attached to each end whistled due to the speed they were going at. Omoi tentatively thrust his sword forwards, only for one of the end weights to impact on it hard enough that it almost jerked out of his hands. My Kasari Fubwa is a more than a match for your blade. Tenten gloated as Omoi slowly slid into a defensive posture, then her eyes widened as Omoi's blade started to glow and emit sparks. Raiton. Oh hell. Omoi stutter-stepped, whipping the blade round in a rising arc that left a trail of light. The lightning-augmented blade almost seemed to howl as it sliced through one of the chains of Tenten's weapon, then Omoi dropped prone to avoid the now broken weapon as Tenten flung it at him while leaping backwards. Twin Rising Dragons. Tenten shouted, pulling out a second pair of prepared scrolls, and Omoi's eyes widened in shock. Once again, the rain of kunai slashed down and Omoi vanished, leaving a log to take the brunt of the attack. Where did you go? Tenten growled as she dropped to the ground, then she spun on the spot. The wires attached to the weapons briefly glinted as the kunai were jerked from the arena floor and sent hurtling into the copse of trees, slashing into it with such speed that several of the trees almost exploded into kindling. That should have. Aard. Tenten convulsed as lightning snapped through her body, then she collapsed, twitching and shaking as Omoi stepped out of the trees, releasing the wires that he had been holding in one hand as he used a piece of cloth to start dabbing at the multiple cuts on his head and shoulder. Walking up, he lightly placed the tip of his sword against Tenten's throat and glanced across at Shursui. As Tenten is no longer able to continue, the winner is Omoi of Kumo. Shursui announced. How did he do that? Kankuro gasped and Hinata answered. He channeled Raiton through the wires that she was holding, enough to disrupt her ability to move. If he had used more, he could have killed her. The puppeteer whistled in amazement. Thank goodness you can't do that with chakra threads. Shursui watched as the medics loaded Tenten onto a stretcher and carried her out of the arena, then he turned to see Omoi rejoin Samui in the contestants' box. The second match is Kankuro of Sunagakure against Urei Ruto of Kanahagakure. Please could both contestants come down? Hinata smiled as her Byakugan caught the clone sprinting out to beside Shursui, then it kawarimi'd with Naruto even as Kankuro vanished down the stairwell. Ruto. Shursui-san. The hell? Kankuro said in shock as he emerged from the tunnel and spotted his opponent waiting for him. How kind of you to show up. Shursui smirked, earning a glower. Please take your places. Naruto moved to Shursui's left and turned to face Kankuro, who unslung his bandage-wrapped package and placed it on the ground before putting his other hand on a scroll. Ready? Good. Shursui said. Urei Ruto of Kanahagakure vs Kankuro of Sunagakure. Second match, fight. Kankuro unrolled the scroll with a snap and a cloud of chakra smoke marked the appearance of a six-armed puppet even as the bandage-wrapped package unraveled to reveal his four-armed puppet from the preliminaries. Naruto pulled out two scrolls and placed them on the ground, flicking them to cause them to unroll, revealing lines of seals. Smoke tags? Hinata whispered in confusion. What are you planning and why all the clones? The unrolled scrolls exploded in a thick bank of cloud which quickly dissipated to reveal a long line of humanoid shapes. As the smoke finally cleared, Kankuro found himself facing 50 puppets of various designs, all of whom were moving. And not just moving, some of them were moving to form a combat line, screening the others. Even Lady Chio can't control more than 20 puppets at once, and in combat she's limited to 10. The Kazekage half-shouted. How in blazes is that boy doing that? Kankuro swallowed as he found himself seriously outnumbered. Just keeping that many puppets standing was a seriously non-trivial exercise, but managing to control them all enough to spread out and take individual combat stances? Oh fuck. He whispered to himself as he sidled behind his puppets, then a thought occurred to him. A quick tug of chakra opened the six-armed puppet's torso and Kankuro almost hurled himself into the revealed compartment and slammed it shut after him. A few seconds later, kunai blades emerged from all of the slots in the torso, preventing ingress while increasing the defenses of the puppet. Ha! Kankuro shouted in triumph. Safe. Now, watch this. Crow almost flew forwards, blades extending from its wrists, while a long needle emerged from its mouth, the discolored metal indicating the presence of poison. The puppet raced towards Naruto, only to be intercepted and held by a dozen of Naruto's force. Damn it. Kankuro's voice cursed as Crow was quickly disassembled into its component pieces, and then the assembled puppets began moving towards Black Ant and its increasingly nervous cargo. Proctor? Kankuro's voice echoed. I forfeit? Winner, Urei Ruto. Shursui announced, then his eyes widened as Naruto's puppets vanished in clouds of chakra smoke. What? Shursui's shocked question was echoed, almost literally, by Kankuro. Henged Kage Bunshin. Naruto smirked under his mask. I had them pretend to be puppets to freak Kankuro out. It worked, damn it. Kankuro grumped as he wriggled out of his hidey hole. I thought he was Sasori reborn or something. Yay, Ruto. Hanabi cheered as the Kage Yukai Bunshin of Kurama balanced on her shoulders for a better view. Nice one, Kit. Kurama whispered from his perch on the girl's shoulders. Very sneaky. Interesting. The Kazekage said as he sat down. You have some very sneaky ninja, Hokage-san. Itachi nodded slowly. I taught him well. He said, failing to hide his pride, and from his seat, A looked at him. Him and that Hyuga girl, right? Wasn't the third one the one who got knocked out by Samui? After face-planting in her chest. Itachi confirmed, and A started to chuckle. She kept rather quiet about that. Not surprising. Time for the third match. Shursui declared. Please could Rock Lee of Konohagakure and Samui of Kumogakure make their way to the arena floor? YOSH. Let our battle prove that our flames of youth burn brightly. Lee exulted as he hurled himself off the balcony, landing lightly on the ground. Samui paused to check that her high-necked wrap top was securely fastened, and not revealing even the slightest hint of cleavage before she strode down the stairs, pausing to let a grouchy Kankuro past, his one intact puppet carrying the disassembled remnants of the other. Good luck. Kankuro said as he passed by. Those leaf nin are sneaky. I saw. Samui said to his retreating back, then she squared her shoulders and finished her descent, emerging into the bright arena. Taking a covert deep breath, she strode towards the center of the field where the proctor and her opponent were waiting. Our third match is between two Kenjutsu specialists. Shursui announced as she drew to a halt before him. Rock Lee of Konoha, user of paired katana, and Samui of Kumo, wielding a tanto. Are you both ready? Lee's hands blurred briefly as his swords seemed to materialize in them. Samui slowly reached behind her back and unsheathed her tanto, holding it in a classic defensive pose. Ready. YOSH. Let us show off our youthful skills. Shursui gave Lee a bank look, then he nodded. Match 3 fight. Even as Shursui vanished, reappearing halfway to the wall, both Jinin moved, their blades catching the light as they launched their attacks. Samui's tanto briefly halted both of Lee's swords, then he spun in a move that forced Samui to leap away to avoid being stabbed. You are very skilled. Lee grinned as Samui recovered. It is good to finally have a strong adversary. What the hell? Karui screamed from the audience. What the hell was I then? Before Lee could answer, he found himself having to sway from side to side to avoid the high-speed series of stabs and thrusts being aimed at him, then suddenly he was past Samui, his blades held out to either side. You should surrender. He said as Samui's sleeves suddenly shredded. No, you should. Samui responded as Lee's top split from his right shoulder to his left hip. Lee looked down, then with a quick move, he sliced off his ruined shirt, leaving him bare-chested. At the sight of his toned musculature, a chorus of fangirlish squeals echoed from the audience. Damn. Samui muttered as she quickly sliced off her shredded sleeves, so that they would not tangle and slow her down. You look like you've trained damn hard. I have spent many hours learning the art of the sword. Lee responded as he turned and took a new stance. It shows. Samui grumbled, then she lunged forwards but quickly retreated. Try this for size. Lee blinked as Samui started to make hand seals, then suddenly he blurred to in front of her, his foot planting itself in her midsection and sending her flying. Despite the pain she was feeling, Samui managed to turn her flight into an airborne roll, landing on the ground and skidding 12 feet before coming to a stop. I have been trained to recognize the most common hand seal sequences of Genjutsu. Lee stated. I am aware of my weaknesses, it was one of the lessons that my senseis taught me. Damn it. This is not cool. Samui cursed as she finally straightened up. Taitsu as well? I said in an impressed tone of voice. Kid's got potential. He'll be a beast on the battlefield. Samui blocked frantically, dodging the attacks that she couldn't parry. Only her sparring sessions with her sensei, who used up to 7 swords simultaneously, saved her. Even though Lee was using only 2 swords, his sheer speed and agility made it seem like he was using up to 3 times that number. And he wouldn't stop grinning. A line of pain on her arm indicated that he had somehow got through her guard and Samui disengaged in a whirl of blades, leaping away even as her spare hand pulled out a small roll of bandages. A practiced swipe of her blade cut off a length of bandage which she quickly wrapped around her upper arm, sealing it into place with a quick chakra pulse. Opposite her, Lee had thrown one of his swords upwards and applied a similar bandage to the small cut on his chest which she had somehow managed to inflict, then he caught his sword as it dropped back down. Samui bit back the urge to swear. He hadn't even been watching his sword as he did that. The amount of training needed to reach that level was just insane. Lee charged forwards, his swords moving so fast that they looked like metal fans winking in the light, and Samui threw a trio of paper bombs in front of her. Lee emerged from the explosion slightly soot-streaked and Samui stiffened as Lee's swords punched straight through her belly and shoulder, then she vanished in a cloud of smoke, leaving a log impaled on the blades. Very clever, Samui-san. Lee whispered, then his muscles bulged as he ripped his swords out of the log, sending 2 arcs of splinters flying outwards. Where are? Erf. Megan, Narakumi no Jutsu. Samui panted triumphantly as she emerged from behind a fallen tree. Thank you, B-sensei. Lee grimaced as the illusion tried to draw him deeper, then he crouched and clenched his fists. Kaimon. A sudden surge of chakra blasted out from Lee and Samui's eyes widened in shock as Lee straightened up and turned to face her. I took you too lightly. He said grimly. Now, witness the power of youth. Samui barely managed to interpose her blade in front of the first attack, only to have it shatter as Lee's twin katanas sliced straight through it. Half a second later, Samui was launched into the air by a rising kick, then Lee seemed to vanish. What the? The Raikage gasped. Did he just open the first gate? He did. Itachi agreed. But surely simply inflicting pain upon himself should have been enough to dispel the genjutsu. It is. I said harshly. But by opening the first gate, he's made himself almost totally immune. Only a Sharingan can cast an illusion on someone using the first gate, although using 3 means not even a Mangekyo can successfully cast a genjutsu. We found that out by accident during the Second Shinobi War. I was unaware of that. Itachi admitted, earning a sideways glance from A. Samui seemed to jerk in midair, as she was pummeled by an opponent moving so fast that she couldn't even work out where he had been. A sickening crack sounded as her leg bent in a direction that it shouldn't have been able to, then her left arm broke in 3 places before she slammed back onto the ground, unable to move or even think. A shape blocked the light from her unseeing eyes as Shursui bent over her. Samui is currently unable to continue to fight. Therefore, the winner is Rock Lee. I would appreciate some medical attention myself. Lee admitted as the medical ninja ran towards them. Although I only opened the first gate, and not the 4 that I can open, I still took some damage that I would like to have treated before my next match. Shursui nodded and stepped out of the way of the stretcher bearers. Very well. There are going to be 3 matches until you are required to fight again. If you have not returned by that time, it will count as a forfeit. Understood, Shursui-san. Lee said with a bow and a slight wince, then he turned to follow the Mednin off the field. Shursui watched them leave, then he turned his attention back to the crowd. Our next match shall be between Hozuki Suigetsu of Kirigakure and Gaara of Sunagakure. Could the 2 contestants please make their way to the arena floor? In a Genjutsu-shielded area atop the Hokage mountain, a group of 8 figures wearing black cloaks with red clouds stood on the lip of the cliff, watching over the hidden village. My agents have reported in, Pain-sama, Orochimaru said. Their tunnels have reached the periphery of the Hyuga clan compound, while the summoning arrays have been completed as planned. Excellent. Pain said as he gazed at the distant arena. I assume that your other preparations have been equally successful? They have. Orochimaru agreed. The other clans will find themselves weakened, reducing Konoha's strength to the point where it will barely be able to defend itself. Our revenge has been long in coming, but now, the Red Dawn will cast its light across the nations. Pain said calmly. Gaara appeared just in front of Shursui in a swirl of sand while Suigetsu seemed to materialize in a splash of water. The 2 teens exchanged glances, with Gaara frowning slightly at the sight of the large gourd that Suigetsu was carrying, a gourd superficially similar to his own. Take your position, gentlemen. Shursui commanded, and the 2 teens backed away from each other until there were almost 20 paces between them. The 4th match between Hozuki Suigetsu of Kirigakure and Gaara of Sunagakure. Shursui announced as he took a couple of quick steps backwards. Fight. Chapter 28. The 4th match between Hozuki Suigetsu of Kirigakure and Gaara of Sunagakure. Shursui announced as he took a couple of quick steps backwards. Fight. The cork of Gaara's gourd popped off as if it had been propelled by a blast of air, and sand started to flow out of the gourd's mouth, cascading down to form a circle around Gaara. Nice trick. Suigetsu sneered as he reached down and twisted the valve of the tap set into his own gourd. I can do something like that too. A veritable river cascaded out of the tap, splashing around Suigetsu and forming a large puddle that slowly expanded. Suigetsu lowered his gourd to the ground and pulled out his dual weapon. Sand versus water. Let's see how you stand up to me, raccoon boy. Gaara stood motionless, but his eyes narrowed slightly, then he thrust out one hand, causing a wave of sand to lash out and cover Suigetsu. Sabaka so-so. He stated, clenching his fist, and the sand seemed to implode. However, instead of blood, water fountained out and splashed into the forming puddle, then Suigetsu seemed to reform as he rose from the rippling surface. That actually hurt. He said conversationally as Gaara stared at him. You survived. Gaara said as if he had expected it. He survived. The Kazekage said in shock, and Mei released a musical giggle. He is from the Hozuki clan. Like his brother, he not only has control over water, but can turn himself into it, allowing him to heal instantly, or escape places that no one else can escape from. Standing behind Mei, Chojuro nodded in agreement, his gaze fixed on his teammate. Let's have some fun. Fun. Suigetsu laughed as his muscles seemed to bulge and expand while the puddle he was standing in lowered slightly, then he ran forwards. A wall of sand rose in front of him, but Suigetsu swung the maul portion of Kabutawari into the wall, causing it to shatter and giving him an opening to attack through. Gotcha. The axe blade carved straight through Gaara, causing him to disintegrate into a shower of sand, and Suigetsu looked around in confusion. Where are you? Here. Gaara said as he rose from what had appeared to merely be a random patch of sand. Around him, more sand fountained up, and the gourd on his back suddenly cracked and disintegrated to add to his protections. Nice escape. Suigetsu allowed. You prepared that without me realizing. Gaara inclined his head in confirmation of Suigetsu's realization, then he ducked as another axe blade sliced through where his neck had been. Mizu Bunshin. The Raikage noted. How appropriate. It does explain why he summoned the water. The Kazekage agreed as Mei smirked. Gaara fired a salvo of Sanshiruken at the two Suigetsus, and they both collapsed in splashes of water before another emerged from the still-growing puddle. You took down both my clones, although they were only a tenth as strong as me. Suigetsu said as he hefted his weapon again, then he charged forwards, swinging his axe high. A thick wall of sand fountained up, and the axe blade embedded itself in it. Suigetsu smirked as he swung the maul, and it struck the back of the axe, causing the sand wall to almost explode. Leaping through the gap, he swung the axe blade in an overhead arc, bisecting Gaara, and causing him to collapse into a pile of sand. What? Again? Suigetsu cursed as he spun round, looking to see where his adversary had Kawarini to this time, then he swore as no less than 4 Gaaras rose from different patches of sand. Leaping back to stand on the water, he summoned a new quartet of Mizu Bunshin, and then started to flicker through a series of hand seals. Ox, monkey, hare, rat, boar, bird, ox, horse, bird, rat, tiger. The 4 clones drew their weapons and charged at the 4 Gaaras. The first one was met by a sand spear through his gut, which caused him to dispel even as his axe strike struck and dispelled the sand Gaara. Dog, tiger, snake, ox, ram, snake, boar, ram, rat, young water, monkey. The second and third clones attacked simultaneously, one of them diving under the sand spear to deliver a rising strike that cleaved its target from the crotch to the chest, while the other switched his grip to the head of the axe and swung the maul round on its strap to slam into the Sunabunshin, dispelling it. Bird, dragon, bird, ox, horse, ram, tiger, snake, rat, monkey, hare, boar. The remaining Gaara raised his hand as the 4th clone charged towards him, and a barrage of sand kunai slashed outwards, catching the 3 remaining clones and dispelling them into sprays of water. Dragon, ram, rat, ox, monkey, bird, young water, rat, boar, bird. With a massive roar, the water around Suigetsu rose, forming into a long water dragon which uncoiled itself towards Gaara, colliding with him even through the wall that he erected in an attempt to stop it. Sent flying by the impact, Gaara skidded along the ground, coming to rest just by the wall. Ha! Suigetsu gloated. I win. Wah! A sphere of sand formed around Suigetsu and Gaara emerged from a patch of sand beside it even as the clone by the wall collapsed. I have him trapped and his weapons restrained. Gaara droned. The sphere is waterproof and airtight, meaning that he will suffocate if I do not release him. Shursui nodded slowly, then glanced at the Kage box. The winner is Gaara of the desert. Gaara, please release your opponent. The sand sphere retracted and Suigetsu looked round at the cheering crowds before sighing. Damn it. I just lost, didn't I? I'm afraid so. Shursui said, patting the younger man on the shoulder. You were out Gambit. Damn it. Suigetsu cursed, then he closed his eyes and inhaled deeply as he fought his anger down. Sorry. Normally only Haku can beat me that fast. Actually, Haku's faster than that. Damned Hyoton blood limit. Shursui shrugged and looked round, pausing as he saw the flowing sand forming into the gourd on Gaara's back. If you two will please return to the contestants box, and could Hyuga Hinata and Yuki Haku please come down to the arena? Good luck. Naruto whispered as he hugged Hinata, then he stepped back. Oh, find out Haku's gender, will you? It's been bugging me. All right. Hinata giggled, then she gave her fiancé a quick kiss on his mask before half running down the stairs. I find myself wondering if I will ever meet a girl as youthful as Hinata is. Lee said as he entered the box. What did I miss? Gaara beat Suigetsu by holding him in a sand sphere. Naruto said with a slight shrug. Gaara uses his sand for offense and defense as well as making sand clones from it. So I need to ensure that I am attacking the correct target. Lee mused. How does he use it offensively? Hinata looked at her opponent, who returned her gaze impassively as they splashed through one of the puddles left from the previous match, coming to a stop in front of Hirosaki. The final match of the first round. Hirosaki announced. Hyuga Hinata of Kanehagakure vs Yuki Haku of Kirigakure. Hinata, are you ready? Hinata activated her Byakugan, then blinked. How? Haku looked at her curiously and Hinata tried again. Your clothes, they block my vision. Haku smirked. They are a special chakra-enhanced fabric that absorbs my chakra and uses it to counter any chakra-detecting dojutsu. It was quite expensive, but I believe that it was worth it. Damn. Hayashi cursed. That fabric could spell the end of our Juken. What do you mean, father? Hanabi queried and Hayashi glared at the Kiri Genin. If you cannot see someone's tenketsu, how can you hit them? Hanabi's eyes widened in horrified realization. Now that we have that question answered, Haku, are you ready? Hirosaki asked and Haku nodded, lifting one hand to the handle of the sword slung behind her shoulder. Then fight. Kaiten. Hinata briefly vanished in a dome of chakra, and only Haku's instinctive leap away kept Hinata from an instant victory, although the chakra dome caught Haku's foot, sending the Genin cartwheeling through the air before landing with a roll that finished in a defensive stance. Nice move, but it's my turn. Haku half-drew the Nuabari in one hand while making one-handed seals with the other. As a dozen mirrors rose out of various puddles around the arena, Hinata started to sprint towards her adversary. Not fast enough. Haku stated, stepping backwards into one of the mirrors, and a moment later, all of the mirrors showed Haku's image. This is a variation of my most lethal technique. Haku said, resheathing the sword and pulling out Senbon before preparing to throw them. Let us see how long your Kaiten will protect you for. Hinata dropped into a Juho stance, then her hands started moving in blurring patterns, leaving almost ghostly trails behind as chakra blades lashed out, intercepting the first barrage of Senbon and causing them to disintegrate. What? The Shugohaku Rokajuyan show. Hayashi said with a proud smile briefly showing on his face. How long can sis keep doing that? Hanabi wondered. Longer than the Kaiten. Hayashi admitted. Hinata stood in the middle of the arena, her hands weaving the sphere of protection around herself as the Senbon barrages struck uselessly. After a few minutes, the barrages ended and Hinata slowed, then lowered her arms. That is an amazing skill. Haku admitted, stepping out of the mirror that was furthest away from Hinata. But how will you do against my ice blades? Haku's hands were briefly encased in fog before it dissipated, revealing a trio of ice blades extending from the back of each hand. Haku sprinted forwards, then leapt into the air, somersaulting to slash the claws through any possible block. In a blur of movement, Hinata sidestepped Haku's attack and spun round, delivering a powerful reverse kick to Haku's shoulder. That wasn't Juho. Hanabi gasped and Hayashi nodded. I believe that it was Hibi style. Hinata's training with Anko-san seems to have been rather successful. Haku broke contact and retreated rapidly, watching Hinata warily. That is a very powerful style you have. Hinata nodded briefly in acknowledgement, then her eyes narrowed as Haku re-entered the ice mirrors and drew Nuabari from its sheath. I apologize, but I will not lose to you. Even as Hinata began to start her defensive technique, Haku seemed to blur past her a dozen times, then Hinata was jolted into the air, held suspended by the wire that pierced her clothing in a dozen places. Haku stood in front of her, holding the sword a half-foot from her heart. You cannot move. Please surrender, Urk. Hinata's kimono flapped in the breeze as Hinata somersaulted out of it to regain her mobility, kicking Haku in the stomach as she did so. Hayashi facepalmed as the Hyuga around him started gasping about Hinata's lack of modesty, her choice of non-traditional skin-tight undergarments and unbecoming actions not befitting one who used to be the heir to the clan. Will Haku have to do that as well? Hanabi asked, her face a steady in innocent confusion as Kurama fell to the ground, almost crying with laughter. Haku gasped for air, then simply gasped as Hinata's hands glowed with chakra that formed into the shape of lions' heads. My newest technique, Juho Shashiken. Hinata announced, then she dashed forwards, bringing her left hand round in an arc that sent Haku flying backwards. Pursuing the tumbling genin, she launched a powerful uppercut which sent Haku high into the air. Haku's eyes widened as Hinata took position below, ready to launch another attack, then Haku's hand snapped out, sending the Nuwabari slicing through the air. Clever. Zabuza smirked, earning confused looks from the other Jonin sensei. The Nuwabari slammed into the wall and Haku's plummet turned into a swing, using the wire attached to Nuwabari's hilt. The arc took Haku straight into an ice mirror and Hinata cursed as Haku's image appeared in all the mirrors once again. You are as fearsome as I expected. Haku said. I begin to understand why Jiraiya of the Densetsu no Sannin fears you. Jiraiya face-bombed. Damn it. I'm never going to live that down, am I? Hinata growled and then suddenly dived as a blur passed through where she had been standing. A twanging noise announced the sudden tightening of the ninja wire tied to Nuwabari, pulling the sword out of the wall and returning it to Haku's waiting hand. An instant later, Hinata was surrounded by the blurs of Haku's movement, then she crashed to the ground, wrapped up in so much wire that she almost resembled a mummy. I believe that this time, I win. Haku said and Hinata managed to nod. I cannot fight any more, so I yield. Winner, Haku. Shursui declared as he materialized by Hinata. Hey, Ruto, come and grab your fiancé. A puff of smoke marked Hinata's translocation via Totan Bunshin out of the wire bindings, and to the contestants' box, where Naruto unsealed a blanket and draped it over Hinata. Shursui shrugged. That works too, I suppose. Haku giggled slightly and Shursui looked at the victorious genin. You may as well head up also. Grab some rest before your next match. There will be a 20-minute break before the next round of combat. Snacks are on sale. Hinata smiled as one of Naruto's clones appeared with a pile of folded clothes in its arms. As Naruto and his clone held up the blanket to provide a corner of privacy, Hinata quickly pulled on the new clothes, breathing a sigh of relief once she was fully clad once more. I'm dressed. Naruto lowered the blanket, then passed his end to his clone to fold up. You realize that you won't hear the end of that? He whispered and Hinata blushed furiously. If it had worked, it wouldn't have mattered, although I'll need to get my kimono repaired. She managed to counter and Naruto nodded, then glanced over at the lollipop-sucking swordsman. I'm up against Omoi next, then Haku. That could be difficult. You'll need to use your blood limit. Hinata nodded. If Haku doesn't know where you are, then she can't target you. I might get lucky, like I did in Wave. Haku noted and Hinata inhaled sharply. That was you? I was aiming for Zabuza-sama at the time. Haku protested quickly, backing away from Hinata's glare. Hitting Ruto-san was an accident. An excellent first round. Said, leaning back in his chair as he flexed his shoulders. You have some very resourceful genin. I admit to being disappointed with Kankuro, the Kazekage said slowly, but given the situation that he was in, that level of trickery might have had me worried as well. Your other son was quite impressive. May allowed as she took a sip from a glass filled with iced fruit juice. I thought that Suigetsu was almost as undefeatable as his brother Mangetsu. I've heard about him. Amused and May nodded. He used to use the Hiramekari, but as he learned to use all 7 of the swords, he now wields the Shibuki. He is the co-leader of the 7 swordsmen, is he not? Itachi queried and May nodded. He deals with the more political aspects and mission selection while Zabuza does the training and day-to-day leadership. May said. A member of the Hozuki clan holding a sword called Splash. Snorted. Nice. You got the lightning swords back yet? How about the shark's word? We are still missing those. Mei said heavily. We have a reward out for them. Itachi pulled out a Kiri bingo book from one of his pockets and quickly riffled through the pages. It looks like Samahata is held by the Nukenin Hoshigaki Kisame, while the Kiba swords are in the possession of Kurasuke Raiga. Kisame? The Biju without a tail? The Kazekage asked curiously. You will have a hard time reclaiming that sword. Mei shrugged slightly, then helped herself to a piece of fruit from the platter on the small table beside her chair. I have great faith in my hunter Nin. We will get the sword back eventually. Naruto paused in the middle of his conversation and pulled off his mask to let him rub his eyes. When he looked up, the sight was still there. Hinata, can you use your Byakugan to look over there? Hinata activated her dojutsu, then her eyes widened. What? How? What is happening? Lee asked, walking over, and then he gasped as he looked at the thing Hinata was pointing at. What in the name of the 1,000 kamis is that? And how is it staying up there? I have no idea. Naruto admitted as they were joined by Omoi. Is that normal for Konoha? No. Hinata said. Ruto-kun, can you send a clone for Shursui? No need, I'm here. Shursui said as he materialized behind them. Now, better you all looking, what the heck? How is a person standing in midair above the Uchiha? Oh fuck. Even as he swore, Shursui vanished, leaving the genin staring at the odd sight. Itachi. We have a problem. Itachi turned and fixed his cousin with a quelling glare, then his eyebrows rose as he noted the worry on Shursui's face. What is it? There's a man standing in midair right above the Uchiha district, and he's gathering a load of chakra. The last time I saw that much chakra was when the Kyuubi attacked. Excuse me. Itachi said to the other Kages, then he shunshined onto the roof, his eyes quickly moving to the cloaked figure. Black cloak with red clouds. I know that I've heard about a group using that style of clothing. Akatsuki. Jiraiya said as he landed just next to him. A group of S-ranked missing Nin. The group that Naka joined after he defected. Itachi realized. But what is that one doing? Something's happening. Shursui warned, then a voice echoed across the village. Shinra Tensei. Chapter 29. Afterwards, no one was able to reconstruct the series of events with any real accuracy. Shinra Tensei. A huge pulse of energy seemed to erupt downwards from the hovering figure, causing the ground to shake and knocking everyone in Konoha off their feet. A moment later, a massive cloud of debris and flames rose from the Uchiha district. The hell? Ko gasped, transfixed by the flame-shot cloud even as the ringing of the quake-dislodged pathside bells inside the Hyuga compound died down. I have no idea. His fellow guard said. But whatev, Ko dived as another arrow slashed through the space that had been occupied by his windpipe even as the now-deceased Hyuga fell backwards, colliding with the hinged panel by the gate. The resulting clangor sparked shouts of alarm, followed by the sounds of combat within the walls. Ko didn't have any time to worry about it as he found himself facing a red-headed girl with chakra-infused tattoos and a flute. Even as he rose into a Juken stance, activating his Byakugan wordlessly, she lifted the flute to her lips and began to play. Uchiha Naka laughed as he leapt into the wreckage-filled crater that had once been the Uchiha district and quite a bit of the surrounding area. Unsheathing his tanto, he quickly thrust it through the heart of an injured woman who was trying to dig someone out of the pile of debris that had once been a house. A second thrust killed the trapped child and Naka moved on to find more victims to slaughter. Behind him, Orochimaru checked the eyes of the bodies, then moved towards the sound of sobbing, pulling out a kunai as he did so. In 5 different warehouses, groups of ninja bearing the sign of a musical note on their Hitayatesh channeled chakra into Fuinjutsu arrays that had been meticulously drawn on the wooden floors. Seconds later, the warehouses exploded as giant snakes erupted through the roofs, intent on causing as much devastation as possible. The arcing debris alone was enough to spark panic amidst the civilians. The presence of the snakes enhanced that panic to uncontrollable levels. Over 150 civilians were killed in the resulting stampede. "Get the civilians into the shelters," Itachi shouted as he shunshined back into the Kage box, the seals picking up and magnifying his orders. "All available Chunin protect the civilians. All Uchiha no Mangekyo target the intruders. Jiraiya, target the snakes. Jonin, attack the enemy." The Raikage stood up and flexed his muscles as Darui pulled his sword, twisting it so that the blade unfolded and locked in place. "I'll take the three-headed snake. It's been a while since I had a decent workout. B, cover my back. Yujito, help out here." "You got it, bro." Hi, Asama." The Kazekage stepped forwards, gold dust billowing from his sleeves as dark rings formed around his eyes. "I will aid with the evacuation. Count me in as well." Mei said as Chojuro drew his sword and began charging it with chakra. Ko almost smirked as his Byakugan helped to pierce the odd genjutsu that the flute player was using. Lunging forwards, he struck at her, causing her to abandon her genjutsu as she tried to dodge. "How the fuck did you avoid my illusion? It relied on the music you were playing, correct?" Ko asked almost conversationally as he launched another series of strikes. "Well, I'm totally tone deaf. I guess that means I'm naturally immune." "Fuck." The redhead cursed as she used her flute to block another strike. "Why the hell did I end up fighting a shithead like you?" Ko launched another series of attacks, then leapt backwards as a huge figure landed where he had been standing. "Taiyuya, what's taking you so long?" "Jirobe. Smash this hithead. He's immune to my genjutsu." The new arrival snarled as he clenched his fists. "You're gonna get flattened, blank eyes." The figure that had destroyed almost a quarter of Konoha turned and floated towards the arena, which was rapidly emptying as the genin guided the civilians out. As it landed, a second figure arced through the air to land beside it, then a cloud of smoke engulfed them, clearing to reveal that they had been joined by another four. "You will explain yourselves." Itachi growled and one of the cloaked men looked at him with silvery rippled eyes. "The Rinnegan." Sarutobi gasped from his position flanking Itachi. "Jiraiya described it to me once, one of his pupils in Amagakure had it, but they were all killed by Hanzo." "And why attack us now?" Itachi ground out, earning a long look. "We have our reasons. We are here to humble Konoha. You have thrived on your reputation as the strongest for too long, and it is time for that to end." "Who are you?" Mei asked sweetly and the man gazed at her without any sign of emotion. "I am Pain. We are Pain, the true god of shinobi. Through us, peace will be brought to the world. By killing everyone who stands in your way?" Sarutobi growled and the lead Pain tilted his head slightly. "If you do not stand with us, you stand against us. We are the future, and when the time comes, we shall step forth to claim that which is ours, and you will not stop us." A green blur dashed forwards and the lead figure held out one hand. "Shinra Tensei." A blast of energy sent Madogai smashing through one of the arena walls, then another of the six clapped his hands. A massive cloud of smoke formed and dissipated to reveal a giant chameleon, one with a bandage that wrapped around the stump of the right horn on its head, the right eye missing and the other eye replaced by a Rinnegan. The chameleon reared up, then a massive staff smashed into it, sending it reeling backwards as a giant boot slammed down. "I got this one." Akamichi Chuza rumbled and he advanced towards his summoned adversary, kicking it through the side of the stadium. "Thank goodness for Akamichi Kinjitsus." Sarutobi muttered to himself, then he ducked under a rocket that had been fired by one of the six, one who had shed his cloak to reveal that he had 6 arms, one of which had extended to launch the rockets, and was retracting. "The hell?" The Kazekage mused as he used his gold dust to deflect the looping rockets. "That's Takuma. He went missing a dozen years ago, but I know he didn't have those 4 extra arms, those piercings or those eyes." Dodge. Everyone either dived for cover or shunshined out of the way of a blast of energy. Shursui! Itachi shouted and his cousin appeared beside him. Summon any jonin not engaged in combat, and get Nara Shikaka here as. I'm here. The jonin commander said. Interesting, the one on the left just reacted to an attack that he could not have seen unless he had the Byakugan, but since he has the Rinnegan. You know about it? I am the jonin commander. Nara said almost reproachfully. It is part of my job to research all the Kekkai Genkai that Konoha may be able to gain, and as such, I know from Jiraiya's report that the Rinnegan does not grant an expanded field of view. No, something else is happening. A massive fireball launched by the Uchiha fizzled out as one of the six moved to intercept it. A moment later, black flames engulfed the figure, only for them to fade as well. Impossible! Fugaku yelled as Naori wiped the blood from her eye. That was Amaterasu. It burns for a full week. Keep attacking. Nara said with a frown. There's something off here, and I need more information. Irika snarled as he stabbed another attacker through the eyeball, killing her. He didn't recognize the origin of the symbol on their Hitayatesh, but it had become obvious almost immediately that anyone wearing a musical note symbol was an enemy and needed to be killed. No one would harm his newest class of students. Enemy Chunin, Jonin or Kage, none of them would be allowed to pass. Another Otonin leapt at him, only to jolt to a stop in midair and collapse with his throat slit open. Boss sent us to help you, Irika-sensei. A familiar voice said and Irika grinned. Good to have you, Roto. Shikamaru grunted as he used his shadow to immobilize a trio of Otonin, then the street seemed to shake as Choji rolled down it, flattening the three. Come on! Ino shouted as she chivied the panicking civilians into the shelter. We don't have time for you two to play around. Troublesome blonde. Shikamaru groaned as he and Choji moved towards her. Sasuke paused in the exit, then he turned round to get a glimpse of his brother. Just as he turned, he saw his father stabbed through the heart by a black metal blade. Fought here. Sasuke's eyes flashed red, the tomos blending and twisting to form around three overlapping red ellipses. Things his brother had spoken about flashed through his mind, and he fixed his gaze on the enemy who was holding back, positioned behind the other five. Amaterasu. The figure jolted as the black fire engulfed it and Sasuke collapsed, his eyes returning to their normal black as the world faded out for him. The five pains froze as their final member collapsed, flesh burning away, and Nara nodded. They're mind-linked, like that Kenjutsu Inoichi told me about. He announced. What one sees, they all see, but they each seem to have different abilities. Three of the pains turned to glare at Nara, and he stepped back. Troublesome. One of the pains suddenly punched out, causing a cloud of chakra smoke to appear. Interesting. A smirked as he and B performed their signature move on the third head of the three-headed snake, ripping its neck apart and finally sending the beast back to the summons realm. This is bad, Konoha's hit / they're gonna be down for quite a bit. The Uchihas are gone, because of this pain / I'll tell you things won't be the same. You got that right, little bro. A said as he absently backhanded an attacking shinobi, sending the shattered body through a nearby wall. Unless we stomp on that wrinkled dwarf, we could be looking at the fourth shinobi war as he tries to take revenge. And we need the money that peace brings us. The ground shook as Akamichi Chuza crashed through a couple of buildings before shrinking back to his regular size. I looked at the thing that had knocked out the clan head. That is a damned big ox. A great big ox with fur of brown / I'll go horn to horn and take it down. Time to fight, to be real bold / time to use tailed beast mode. I leaped away as B vanished in a rush of chakra, then a giant ox as large as the summoned one appeared, an ox with 8 tentacles instead of its tail. The new ox growled, then charged forwards, meeting its rival with a crash that sent shockwaves through some of the nearby buildings. Damn it, B. I roared. Keep the damage down. Naruto swore as he found himself face to face with a giant snake. What was worrying him was that it somehow knew where he was, even though he was fully invisible. He had memories of it purposefully crushing over a dozen of his clones as it rampaged through the fleeing civilians. What do we have here? A tasty little morsel, Prepare to die. Kuchiyos no Jutsu. Hinata stood in the main entrance to the shelter, her hands blurring while behind her, several Chunin struggled to undo the sabotage that kept the door open. Die. An Otonin lunged forwards, thrusting his kunai forwards as he tried to penetrate her shield. The whipping chakra blade sliced through the kunai, turning it into scrap metal, and the Otonin had just enough time for his eyes to open wide in shock before his momentum carried him to his death. Hinata concentrated as hard as she could on keeping her technique going, trying to ignore the blood and shredded flesh spattering her. Although she would need her snugly afterwards. Manda. The giant purple snake paused in the face of the new arrival. Lord Shiromori? The chakra cloud coalesced into the form of a giant chameleon with horns like a crown. What are you doing here? I was summoned to help destroy this place. Manda said, and Shiromori looked round. This is Konoha. Home of my summoner. Manda gulped and tried to look as innocent as possible. We will discuss this at Ryuchi Cave. Now. Shiromori vanished in a cloud of chakra and Manda looked down at Naruto before also vanishing. Naruto grinned, then spun round and threw his hand out. A long, almost transparent chain of chakra lanced out and speared an attacking Otonin to the wall. Orochimaru looked round at the wreckage with a grin as he placed the container holding several sets of Sharingan eyes at various degrees of development into a storage scroll, then he pulled out a trio of scrolls. Laying them flat, he unrolled them, revealing highly complex seals which seemed to write before expanding to cover the ground. With a frown of concentration, Orochimaru used the tiger, snake, dog and dragon hand seals before clapping his hands, and a trio of coffins rose from the center of the seals. As the coffins settled into place, Orochimaru smirked, then he triggered a chakra pulse that opened all three coffins and caused a body to crash to the ground. Ha! Oh, looks like Minakuan won't be joining in. Orochimaru sighed, glancing at the bound and drugged kunoichi lying in front of the open coffin. Pulling out a pair of kunai with tags on them, he stepped forwards and inserted the kunai into the backs of the heads of the other two figures, causing their skin to turn from cracked and gray to smooth and healthy. Shodai, Nidame. He smirked and the two men looked at him. Your orders are simple. This village you once ruled, attack it. Destroy the tower and the hospital first, then do general damage until the village is flattened or I release the technique. Go. Both men seemed to vanish in blurs of motion and Orochimaru strode away, without sparing a glance for the kunoichi he left behind. Kurama snarled as he leapt through the air. The Otonin who was about to kill a civilian woman never even saw the 9 tails that pierced him, killing him instantly. Get to a shelter now. Kurama snarled at the woman before he leapt towards another group of Otonin. As he did so, a thought suddenly occurred to him. Damn it, I'm helping to protect Konoha? I'll never hear the end of this. Then again, it should be good for a year's worth of belly rubs and daily grooming from Hanabi-chan. When the hell did I start thinking about her as Chan? The bull with the Rinnegan eyes crashed to the ground and dispelled. The tentacled ox roared in triumph, then shimmered and contracted until Killer Bee was standing amidst the shattered buildings. Yeah, I'm good, I'm Mr. 8/ when it comes to combat, I'm real great. B flinched and turned in time to see a slam punch a white-haired ninja through a wall. A moment later, the ninja re-emerged, pulling a bone sword out of his shoulder as he snarled in irritation. So not cool. B winced as he moved to stand by his brother. Wow, I'm sounding like Samui-chan. Rock Lee, Yuzuki Yugao and Gekko Heiate spun and sliced through the Soundnin attack squad like a well-oiled machine of destruction. Whenever one of them blocked an attack, one of the other two was there to strike the attacker down. Within moments, the 20 attacking nin were all dead or disabled, and the sword trio paused, looking round. So, where to next? Yugao asked, just as an armored, white-haired figure landed before them, turning to reveal brown eyes with black scara. Scara. That looks like Senju Tobarama. Rock Lee gasped as their new adversary drew his sword. But his eyes. You aren't a jonin, so you haven't read the secret histories. Yugao said as she dropped into a combat stance. That is Tobarama revived, but he's under someone else's control. Which makes him an enemy. Hey, ain't finished. We need to hold him until reinforcements arrive, but I don't think we'll survive this. Then it is time. Lee said without his usual grin. Kaimon, Kumon, Simon, Shomon. A veritable wave of chakra exploded from Lee, then he suddenly blurred past Tobarama, slicing off his arm. Tobarama glanced at the stump, then the 3 Konoha ninja stared wide-eyed as the arm regenerated, reforming as if it had never been lost. Oh hell! Yugao muttered as she adjusted her grip. This isn't good. The Kazekage sent another wave of golden dust into the air, intercepting and crushing the poisoned shuriken that were being thrown at the children he had volunteered, much to his own bemusement, to protect. A wave of sand suddenly crashed over the roof that the enemy shinobi were holding, and the Kazekage smiled grimly at the sight of the fountains of blood. Well done, my son. Yaowiawa. The Kazekage lashed out with his magnet release, pinning the Araker to the wall via his armor. How dare you? The Sound Nin shouted. I am the mighty Vajai and I am going to glurk. The Kazekage turned away, allowing the gold coating his fist to dissipate back into dust. Behind him, a piece of wood separated from the top of the newly created hole in the wall and fell, striking the barely conscious ninja in a very painful place. Ow. That was awesome. Was that Jitan? Gasped a kid wearing an odd skullcap helmet. You're cooler than Gramps is. The Kazekage blinked. What? Before the boy could reply, the sound of tearing wood echoed across the village. Orochimaru looked round with a frown as the remaining giant snakes all vanished at once. Absently decapitating and attacking Konoha nin, he shrugged. He always knew that Jiraiya was gifted in Fuinjutsu. His old teammate must have done something to send all of his summons back at once. It was something to keep in mind the next time that he met the white-haired fool. Mokutan Hijitsu, Jukai Koten. Senju Hiroshima stood in front of the collapsing tower, with his hands in the snake seal as branches smashed through the walls of the Hokage Tower, winding and fusing until a giant tree rose from the foundations, some of its branches and roots lancing out through the academy wing. After several minutes, the tree stopped growing and Hiroshima looked up at it, his eyes briefly resting on the circular sign for fire that had been mounted on the side of the tower and was now held between 2 curling branches. His first task done, he turned towards the distant hospital, then his head bounced onto the floor and was encased in ice as his body fell backwards, disintegrating as it did so until a wave of dust hit the ground. Good work, Haku. Zabuza said as he balanced his sword across his shoulders. Thank you, Zabuza-sama. What shall we do with him? Give him to the tree huggers. He's too dangerous to be taken to Kiri. May would kill me if I accidentally let him turn her office into a giant bonsai. Then again, it might solve her paperwork problem. Haku giggled at Zabuza's joke as the duo walked away, Hiroshima's frozen head in Haku's arms. Toby is here to take you back. Toby will help, Toby is a good boy. Orochimaru managed to not roll his eyes as the hanger-on of the Akatsuki bounded up to him. Although Toby's teleportation trick was incredibly useful, he still didn't understand why Pain protected the masked idiot. What about the others? Toby has already taken Naka back and Toby will come back for Pain-sama. Do you want Toby to rescue anyone else? Orochimaru paused just long enough to send a chakrapulse telling his 5 elite bodyguards to retreat, then he shook his head. No, the others are simply weapons and might as well die here. In doing so, they will weaken Konoha, and there are always more where they came from. Let us depart. Okidoki. Toby chirped as the two of them vanished in a strange swirling void. Tobirama paused, his blade just drawing blood above Lee's heart, then he disintegrated. What the hell just happened? Hayate moaned as he finished bandaging his side. Asuma screamed in agony as the energy blast fired by the six-armed pain severed his left leg, almost disintegrating the lower portion of it. A second blast missed him by a mere fraction of an inch, then the 5 remaining pains suddenly vanished in a whirling void. What just happened? Itachi slowly asked, and Hirozen shrugged as he finished binding the stump of his left arm, then he pulled himself to his feet. I don't know. I think that they had achieved their goal, whatever it was. Itachi looked around, then his gaze settled to Shisui, who was walking towards him with Sasuke's body in his arms. Is he alive? Shisui confirmed. But, cousin, he has a Mangekyo. Chapter 30. Itachi gazed out almost meditatively through the gap that would eventually become a proper window. The tree that the temporarily reincarnated Senju Hiroshima had grown had indeed destroyed the old Hokage tower, but had simultaneously created a new one. The inside of the tree was honeycombed with passages, staircases, air vents, and even working bathrooms, proof of Hiroshima's ability to follow his instructions and seriously subvert them at the same time. The main branches had odd flat ridges on them that would allow more rooms to be added simply by placing floors between adjacent branches, while the smaller branches were generally well positioned to support walls or balconies. At the top of the tree, the branches had grown in an odd, interwoven spiral pattern, creating the oval room that Itachi was standing in. The roof consisted of a wooden dome with gaps perfect for skylights, supported by a dozen branch pillars, creating an office space that was almost breathtaking. Unfortunately, Konoha as a whole had suffered greatly. I have the reports. Itachi nodded to Sarutobi and glanced at his wooden left hand curiously. Sarutobi followed his gaze and smiled self-consciously. A puppet arm taken as a trophy in the last Great War. I studied the basics of Suna-style puppetry when I was younger, but it never really appealed to me until now. And Asuma? He's learning how to use a puppet leg. Hirozen shrugged. It is fortunate that he always had superior chakra control, but it'll take him a while to get back to combat ready. I'd recommend placing him as a teacher in the academy for a few months. Itachi nodded and moved to the desk that dominated the room. Waving for Sarutobi to sit, he accepted the folder. Do you have a summary? It isn't good. Hirozen said. I expect you already know about your clan status. 5 of us left. Itachi growled. Shisui, Sasuke and myself with the Mangekyo and 2 without eyes thanks to that bastard Orochimaru. And Naka, but he does not really count. The Hyuga lost a dozen to an attack, but they killed over 40 attacking ninja in return. The other clans were also hit, but none of them too seriously. Our shinobi forces, however, got hammered. We are currently down to half of our usual active strength, although we should get up to 2/3 once the lightly wounded finish recuperating. The hospital survived, but we lost quite a few doctors. The civilian casualties are still being compiled. We need Tsunade. Itachi declared, then he sighed. We need Tsunade, and not just for her medical skills. We need the second Sannin back. Jiraiya's organization can help to find her, but convincing her to return. She will return. Itachi frowned. Even if I have to threaten to place her in the bingo book as a missing nin, I'll have to send Jiraiya after her. I'd suggest sending Ruto and Hinata as well. Itachi sat down and steepled his fingers. It would be a good first Chunin mission for them, but I would like to hear your reasoning. Between Ruto's Totan Bunshin and Hinata's Byakugan, they should be able to find Tsunade fairly quickly once Jiraiya gets them to her general location. When you consider that Ruto's Kekkai Genkai is a medical marvel that should catch Tsunade's attention, and that Hinata can help to restrain her if she gets violent, I think that those two would be the best to recover my wayward student. Itachi nodded. I agree. Once the other Kages have departed, I shall send them on their way. A noise interrupted him, and he turned as the 12 genin and their senseis filed in. Excellent, you are here, Itachi said. Although the exams were interrupted, several of you proved yourself enough to be promoted. Yuri Iruto, Hyuga Hinata and Rock Lee, please step forwards. The 3 genin did so and Itachi accepted 3 Chunin jackets from Hiruzen. You have proven yourselves worthy of promotion at this time. Congratulations. The other genin started to applaud, as did their jonin senseis from behind them. Inuzuka Kiba, Team Guy is now lacking 1 member, and you are the only member of Team 7 remaining. I am therefore transferring Team Guy to fill the spaces in Team 7. I am certain that you will do your best to get along with your new teammates. Kiba nodded, then glurked as Mato Guy pulled him into a hug. Yash. I shall do my best to help you fan your flames of youthfulness into a veritable conflagration like those of my apprentice Rock Lee. Hokage-sama. Tenten asked quietly, why turn us into the new Team 7? Because Team 7 is one of the most well-known teams in Konoha. Itachi replied just as quietly. Every Hokage except the Shodai has links to Team 7. The first was led by Senju Tobarama, and his student Hiruzen led the second iteration, the Densetsu no Sannin, before becoming Hokage. Jiraiya trained Namikaze Minato in the third iteration, who in turn led the fourth, of which only Hatake Kakashi still lives. And you led the fifth version. Tenten nodded. I see. We'll try to do you proud, Hokage-sama. Guy-sensei. Well, smirked, it's been interesting. Know that we will still uphold our end of the treaty between us. The Kazekage said. No matter who you face. It won't be us. Mei said with a slight scowl marring her features. Those Akatsuki are a threat. If they can hit Konoha like this, I'll have a transport stone sent over. Said. Every other day, whatever's on that stone will be transported to Kumo, where we will copy it and send it to the others. It's how we communicate with our border posts. Are you not afraid that we might reverse engineer it? Itachi asked and they laughed. Ha! Since it relies on a Kekkai Genkai unique to Kumo, you're welcome to try. While we may pick up some of your missions, we'll make sure that your border with us is secure. Same here. Mei nodded. Besides, I owe you for sending Zabuzakuin back. Behind her, the aforementioned swordsman growled slightly as 2 of his genin hid their smirks. The eyes that Pain had, they were the Rinnegan, weren't they? They were. Itachi confirmed. Jiraiya once trained a user of the Rinnegan in Amigakure. I believe that he was called Uzumaki Nagato, but he and the other 2 had been reported to have died at the hands of Hanzo the Salamander. Incredible. The Kazekage mused. I thought that the only user of the Rinnegan was the Sage of the Six Paths, and that it died with him. To have 2 more users confirmed. I am having sketches of the 6 pains made. Itachi said. As one of them has already been identified by the Kazekage, we may be able to determine who the others are or were, and from that discover how they came to become Pain. A good move. Mei nodded. May I request a transport stone as well? I'll have 1 sent to each of you. Said. Itachi, when your Jinchuriki comes of age, send him to us, and I'll have train him fully in how to work with his Biju. Now, I gotta get going. Good luck. Without any further words, turned and strode off, his ninja following him. He paused to fist bump Sasuke before running to catch up with his brother. That was abrupt. Mei said, then she shrugged. Well, we need to be going as well. I hope that Mangetsu has managed to hold things together. I must also take my leave. The Kazekage said. I wish you luck with rebuilding. Gaki, the ink is ready, and so am I. Jiraiya said as he finished setting up his equipment before donning the special visor that let him see Naruto. Once your chakra starts flowing through it, it'll turn invisible. It'll take a few days to fully stabilize, then it'll start filling the reservoirs. I don't know how to actually activate their bunshin though. I'll figure it out. Naruto smiled. I found them in my own mindscape now, I don't need Bisama's help to locate them anymore. Hinata watched as her fiancé shed his top, then she reached out and took his hand, earning a quizzical look from Jiraiya. Hinata made her first kill yesterday. Naruto said quietly. Apparently it was messy. I remember my first kill. Jiraiya said soberly. Hiruzen-sensei took me out drinking afterwards, so that I could cry properly. I assume she held on to you all night? Naruto nodded while Hinata blushed. Good. Keep doing that. Being close to a loved one is the best therapy there is. Now, lie down and don't move. This could take a while. Looking at the scrolls that had been unrolled and attached to the walls, Jiraiya dipped the brush into the almost transparent ink and began to draw. Yash! Guy declaimed as he entered the new Hokage office. Team 7 reporting for duty, Hokage-sama. Excellent timing, Guy-san. Itachi said from behind his desk. The mission will cover ground familiar to Kiba-kun. I need you to travel to the Land of Waves and hire a certain builder who lives there. Tazuna? Kiba queried and he got a nod in return. Cool. His talents and contacts will prove invaluable in rebuilding the village. Itachi noted. The mission is low C-ranked and you will be expected to leave tomorrow at dawn. Hinata-sama has told me a bit about Wave. Niji said. I look forwards to seeing it. Guy accepted the mission scroll, tucking it into his jacket. We shall not let you down, Hokage-sama. Then I would suggest you prepare for the mission. Dismissed. As they left, Itachi caught Kiba saying I always keep a mission pack ready, all I need are some rations. Before his voice faded. Irika. The Chunin looked up from his desk on one side of the wall. Hi, Hokage-sama. Has the tree tower been fully mapped out yet? The ANBU handed the map over this morning. Irika said, rummaging through a stack of files on his desk, then pulling one out. They highlighted all of the entry points, but due to how each room is at a slightly different height, we can't really say it's a floor-by-floor map. Here. Itachi accepted the proffered sheet and raised an eyebrow at the sight of a storage seal. Placing it on his desk, he applied a bit of chakra, causing a glass anwire model to appear. Interesting. He mused. I assume that the different wires mean different types of channels through the tree? Water, electric, air and other. Irika said. There are several water storage areas, the largest is just below the office, although there's a small one in the dome above your head, feeding that tap. Itachi blinked and glanced upwards before he could stop himself. Interesting. Irika nodded, then glanced at the clock mounted on the wall. Itachi-sama, Shimura-san should be arriving in a moment. Excellent. Itachi growled as he turned towards the opening that would soon have a door placed in it. I have several things to discuss with the old Warhawk. Activate. The lines of ink covering Naruto's torso and expanding out to cover half of the floor around him, and Hinata seemed to glow and writhe before flowing inwards, finally forming around the original hack no Fuin Shiki. When the glow faded, 2 new portions were visible near the top of the seal, while 3 were visible underneath. Even as Jiraiya and Hinata watched, the ink slowly faded into invisibility. Jiraiya put on the visor and leaned in. I can just make it out. Looks like it's settled in place. Excellent. It'll be a few days at least before the natural chakra inflow fully energizes the new seals, so don't try to wake your parents up yet. In fact, I'd play it safe and avoid doing any jutsu for the next couple of days. No clones, no shunshins, in fact, you may want to avoid sparring as well. Naruto nodded and Hinata helped him to sit up, then promptly snuggled against him. Okay, that's it for today. Jiraiya said as he started to pack away his equipment. We're going to head out tomorrow to find my old teammate Tsunade. Her skills are pretty much in demand after that damned attack. Now, you two rest up a bit, then head home. I need to speak to the Hokage. Jiraiya-sama. Hokage. Jiraiya nodded as he clambered in through the unglazed window. Hayashi, Shibi. The two advisors nodded in return from their position behind the side desk where they were helping to sort through the paperwork. It has occurred to me that you did not actually come face to face with the ones known as Pain. Itachi said as he handed Jiraiya a slim folder. Here are their images, please see if you have met them before. The one who has been positively identified is the first one. Jiraiya opened the file and his eyebrows shot up. That's the Suna puppet user I fought a few decades ago. He was tough. What was his name again? Takuma. That's him. What the hells? 6 arms, his eyes. The Rinnegan. Hayashi confirmed as he leafed through another stack of papers. Another? Jiraiya gasped, then he looked at the next page. Okami. Yahiko. Jiraiya quickly flipped through the other pictures and frowned. Okay, no sign of Nagato, but Yahiko was his friend. But I heard that he couldn't have. Jiraiya? Jiraiya looked up from the file, looking queasy. I recognize all of them. I don't remember most of the names, but I've encountered them all, and none of them had the Rinnegan at the time. It must have been implanted or something, but the piercings. Perhaps they had something to do with it. I mean, this one was a priest, this one I based the fight in my first novel on, he was from the Fuma clan if I remember rightly. This man used to be a Kusa farmer as well as a ninja, and this one was a shinobi from Takigakure. The preliminary autopsy from the one that Sasuke managed to take down indicates that the piercings are an unknown chakra-conductive metal. Shibi droned. Only a basic autopsy was performed. The body is in a scroll waiting for examination by Tsunade, assuming that your mission is successful. It will be, even if I have to knock the drunk bitch out and carry her back. Jiraiya stated, his face carved like stone. Then you shall leave tomorrow. Little brother. Hokage Nizan. Sasuke smirked weakly from his hospital bed. You present me with an interesting dilemma. Itachi noted. I wish to promote you, but it would be seen by too many as favoritism. Fortunately, Hiruzen-sama revealed his plan to me. Sasuke looked curiously at his brother, then at the smiling former Hokage who had just entered. I am removing you from Kurenai's tutelage and placing you as Hiruzen's apprentice. Itachi said. I am certain that you will learn a great deal from him. But, what about my team? Sasuke protested, earning proud smiles from both men. Shimura Danzo was less than helpful in fending off the attack, a fact which I explained to him displeased me. Itachi smirked. As a result, I have acquired a number of ninja trained under his command who need to be rehabilitated and reintegrated into Konoha's forces. Your replacement is one of them. His name is Sai. My lord. Yes. Conan. The emaciated red-haired figure wheezed as the crab-like chair he was sat in turned to face the woman, the light glinting off the array of metal rods piercing his back. Only 5 paths came back. Your Naraka path. Consumed by black fire. The emaciated man said slowly. I will need a new path, begin searching, for a viable vessel. Yes, my lord. Toby is sorry he wasn't there earlier. A new voice said and Conan glared at the masked figure before walking out of the room. As the door closed, Toby's body language changed. Nagato, tell me that the Uchiha are no longer a threat? Only 2 of those, in Konoha have, the Mangekyo and, they are cousins, not brothers. Nagato whispered. If what you have told me, about the Sharingan, is true, it would take a medic on the level of Tsunade to ensure a successful transplant. Then Tsunade must die. Toby stated. I will give the orders and finalize the teams. Toby turned to face him. And they would be? Kakazu and Naka. Kisame and Deidara. Sasori and Orochimaru. Interesting, but I can see why. Toby mused. Regarding the Snake Sannin and the Bounty Hunter, I am uncertain that we can trust their loyalty. They are still useful. Toby nodded, then held up a small container which had a pair of eyes floating in it. These were once Naori's. Give these to Naka and tell Orochimaru to implant them. We may need another wielder of the eternal Mangekyo on our side. Konoha may be crippled, but there are still 3 other villages. As you wish. Madara. Nagato said, accepting the vial. Toby vanished as one of the paths of pain walked in, and took the vial before walking out. Nagato sighed and closed his eyes. It will all be worth it when we perform the moon's eye plan. A pair of dark eyes slowly opened and gazed almost sightlessly at the hospital ceiling. Hey, you're awake. A voice said, and the dark-haired girl looked round. Do you know where you are? Hospital? The girl croaked and the nurse nodded. Good, and do you know who you are? The girl stared at her for a long moment, panic rising in her eyes, then she shook her head. All right, it's all right. The nurse said reassuringly. Stay calm and I'll get someone who can help you. Her memories are gone. Inoichi sighed as he slumped in the chair in front of Itachi's desk. I probed as deeply as I could without inflicting any injury, and her memories are scrambled beyond repair. On the plus side, that means she isn't loyal to Orochimaru anymore. And her skills? Completely intact. Her aim with Senbon would put Tentans to shame, and she seems to have an affinity to Genjutsu. She can tree walk, but not water walk at this time. Her chakra levels are slightly higher than normal, and she has good control, but nothing out of the ordinary. She has incredibly good hearing though. I did find a memory fragment though. Her name is Tsuchi Kin. Shikaku's already checking the intelligence records to see if we have anything. It does, however, leave the problem of what we're going to do with her. Inoichi sighed. She knows that she had been a ninja and it cost her her memories, so she wants to do something else, but she doesn't have much in the way of civilian skills. Hayashi looked up from his desk. If you wish, I can have Hitomi teach her how to run a household. As Hinata-chan and Ruto-kun are both Chunin now, they may want some staff to keep their planned mansion safe while they are on missions. Itachi blinked a few times, then he nodded. An excellent idea. And since we are speaking about Ruto setting up a home, it occurs to me that although the site of the Yondame's home was cleared, the foundations should still be intact. They are, as are the cellars and vault. Hayashi confirmed. I have had some of my clan examining them on a regular basis, and we have stockpiled quite a few separate beams and pillars ready for when the occasion arises. Itachi and Hayashi exchanged satisfied smirks. Then perhaps a start should be made, so that Ruto-kun will have a home to come back to. Indeed. Lord Hokage. Itachi turned as Anko dived in through the window, a large scroll clutched in her arms. Lord Hokage, look. Anko gasped as she unrolled the scroll on the floor. That is the snake summoning contract. Itachi noted. The names. Look at the last 3 names. Orochimaru, Mitarashi Anko. Yakushi Kabuto? When did you get that scroll? Aoda appeared a few minutes ago, and gave it to me. He said that Manda is no longer the snake boss and the contract with Orochimaru has been severed, making me the new snake summoner, but I never gave this Kabuto permission to sign. Anko stated as she rolled the scroll up again. Itachi nodded. I understand. Ambu. Locate Yakushi Kabuto and bring him to me. Chapter 31. Jiraiya hid a smirk as he glanced backwards to his 2 assistants. Even though they were leaping through the trees with all the maneuvering to avoid branches that it entailed, Naruto and Hinata were still managing to hold on to each other's hand. What really made him want to howl with laughter was that it was obvious that the two of them weren't actually aware that they were doing it. How long before we get there? Naruto called and Jiraiya slowed slightly, sacrificing speed for altitude and getting a look above the canopy of the trees. Only another half hour at this pace. Jiraiya called back as he descended through the branches without causing a single leaf to twitch. I hope that you can keep it up. The snort from behind him didn't come from Naruto, and Jiraiya's grin widened. Coming. Oh. Hello. Kiba? Akamaru. It's been too long. Who are your friends? Kiba looked up from where he had collapsed, rolling onto his back with barely enough energy to wipe the sweat out of his eyes. Hey Tsunami. Oh, you look exhausted. Tsunami said in concern. I'll have some water for you in a moment. Kiba tried to get up, but failed. After a moment, Guy reached down and lifted him by his jacket. My youthful student has yet to fully stoke his flames of youth. I thought I liked running. Kiba moaned as he dangled limply. My legs feel like they're gonna fall off. You're just not used to Guy-sensei's training regimen yet. Tenten said reassuringly. Good afternoon, I am Higurushi Tenten, and these are my teammates, Hyuga Niji and Inuzuka Kiba, and this is our sensei, Mato Guy. We are the rebuilt Team 7. Tsunami gasped. Ruto. Hinata, what happened? They're Chunin now. Tenten smiled. And their sensei is the new Hokage. Oh, but what happened to Kiba? Why isn't he a Chunin? Tenten glanced at her now sleeping teammate. He had a very unfortunate ending to his match. He was knocked out. Niji snorted with suppressed laughter, earning a glare from Tenten. And so, we were recruited to fill the gaps on his team. I see. Tsunami said. Please come in. Team 7 followed the woman into the house and Guy gently laid Kiba onto one of the sofas. So, you're the new Team 7? Tsunami asked. Pardon me, but are you related to Hinata-chan? She is my cousin. Niji confirmed. I thought you looked similar. Tsunami mused. So, what brings you to Wave? We are here to secure your father's services. Guy began. There has been a most unyouthful attack on our village. Orochimaru frowned as his bloody hand rested on the floor. Was that supposed to happen? Sasori deadpanned and Orochimaru gave his hand a look as if it had somehow betrayed him. That should have summoned a messenger snake. Orochimaru said as he stood up, absent-mindedly applying a healing jutsu to his thumb. Odd that it didn't. I wonder. Orochimaru closed his eyes and opened his mouth, then reopened his eyes. Strange, I can't summon my sword either. Lord Orochimaru. Both men turned to see two new shapes enter, one leaning on the other. Kabuto? Yes, Lord Orochimaru. Kabuto panted. I was lucky enough to escape with Vejai's help. They discovered I was working for you, I had to kill 3A and BU to get away. Vejai overheard another ninja saying something about me signing a scroll. The snake summoning scroll. Orochimaru gasped in horrified understanding. It must be in Anko's hands. Kabuto, have you tried summoning a snake since the invasion? I tried and nothing happened, my lord. Orochimaru snarled. Curse that girl, I should have killed her long ago. She must have got her hands on the scroll and cancelled both of our contracts. Toby wonders if this is a bad time. Kisame, Deidara. You have been assigned to kill one of the Densetsu no Sannin. Sounds like it could be a blast, yeah. The shorter of the two men grinned. So, is it the frog or the slug? Your target is Senju Tsunade. The wavering image of pain said. A strong enemy at last. The taller of the two smirked, one hand fondly stroking the hilt of the sword across his back. I'll use my art on her. Deidara laughed. And if that don't kill her, I'll use Samahata. Kisame stated, his teeth showing in a smile that any shark would have been proud of. Do we know where she is? We're going to stop here, Jiraiya said as the small town came into view. And we will find Tsunade here? Hinata asked. No, Jiraiya replied, but I can find out where she is, or where she is going to be. Several of my contacts are here, and they are well connected. I'll leave you two in a hotel room and, okay, that didn't sound right. Nada giggled as Jiraiya tried and failed to find a way to rephrase his sentence. Damn it. Jiraiya cursed after several moments in thought. There's just no way to phrase it that doesn't make me sound like a pimp, is there? Hinata's giggles turned into full laughter as Jiraiya pouted. Come on. He growled as he stomped towards the main gate. The sooner we get there, the sooner I can find out where we should be next. Uchiha Naka stirred, one hand reaching up to the blindfold across his eyes before it was swatted away. Stop that. Kabuto scolded. Implanting those eyes was quite tricky, and ensuring that the implantation took was even more so. Please don't do anything that might undo all of my hard work. The eternal Mangekyo. Naka smirked. Mine at long last. I knew joining Akatsuki was a good move. Kabuto shrugged as he picked up a vial containing Naka's original eyes in a preservative solution. We may be about to gain a new agent within Konoha, one that is well placed in undermining its attempts to rebuild, he said as he placed the vial into a small wooden box, ensuring that the padding inside held it securely. Our new ally is quite put out by the actions of the new Hokage and wishes to seek revenge, claiming the position of Hokage for himself. Tell me, did you ever encounter Shimura Danzo? Danzo? Naka repeated with raised eyebrows. I remember that Fugaka didn't trust him, said that he was even more militaristic than Asuchiha. Interesting. Kabuto mused as he closed the lid of the box. Very interesting. Please, tell me more. Naruto sighed as he sank into the hot water. Beside him, her wrap secured tightly, Hinata leaned against him, resting her head on his shoulder. This is nice. Hinata sighed as she reached up to cup his cheek in her hand. How long can you hold your henge? As long as you want me to. Naruto smiled, reaching up to brush his blonde hair back, then he smiled down at his fiancée. Although given your Byakugan and the visor. You want to know why I asked you to do this? Hinata smiled. Well, sometimes a girl just has to show off the things precious to her. Naruto glanced round, noting how several of the other people in the shared spring were looking at them, most of them smiling as Hinata snuggled closer to him. Point taken, Heim. Hinata's smile widened, then she turned and glared at a spot on the surrounding fence, with her Byakugan activated. I thought you were checking your contacts, Jiraiya. She growled. I do not appreciate you spying on my snuggle time. For a moment, the silence on the other side of the fence seemed almost guilty, then the texture of the silence changed. He's gone. Hinata sighed, then she looked round as the other women in the pool moved to surround her. Is something wrong? Are you a ninja? One of them asked and Hinata nodded slowly. Can we hire you? Another asked quickly and Naruto started to laugh. Hire me? Hinata asked and the women nodded. Yep, to chase away the perverts. I'm not a pervert. A distant voice shouted. I'm a super pervert. Hinata buried her head in her hands, then turned to try and hide against Naruto's chest while he wrapped his hands reassuringly around her. It's all right, Hinata-Heim. He whispered. We only have to put up with it for a little while. Okay, we're super ready. Tazuna exclaimed as he looked over the column of men in carts that had assembled by the end of the bridge in the dawnlight. YOSH! Guy half shouted. Truly your fires of youth burn most brightly, Tazuna-san. Tazuna shrugged, then waved one hand to get the column moving. I'm actually amazed how many of my friends wanted to help. he admitted as Guy grabbed the bar of the most heavily laden cart and began walking with no sign of strain at all. Of course, we all owe Team 7 our freedom. This is just the start of us repaying that debt. A very youthful outlook. Guy grinned, glancing round. I must say that this is good exercise. Glad you think so. Tazuna shrugged. Now, where did my grandson go? They're both Chunin? Inari gasped. Wow. But why aren't you one as well? You're awesome enough. Kiba blushed slightly. I had a bad matchup in the preliminaries and got K.O.D. I don't really remember much of it, but I got teased about it quite a bit since I was winning for most of the match. That must suck. Inari commiserated and Kiba shrugged. It kinda sucks seeing my friends go on ahead, but I've got a new team to work with now, so it's fine. I've never been fitter and I'm getting really strong. Guy-sensei may be insane, but he's a damned good teacher. I'd agree with that. Tenten said from behind them, and Inari looked round. It does take a while to get used to his quirks though. At least he's not doing the sunset genjutsu as often. Only when Lee visits. Kiba nodded and Akamaru yipped in agreement. So, you know how to use that crossbow of yours? If you ask nicely, Tenten might give you a few pointers. I swear, she has to have a Kekkai Genkai or something, she never misses. Whoa, really? Inari gasped and Tenten nodded in confirmation. That is just so cool. Yeah, she even managed to copy and improve on a Senbon strike after seeing it performed once. Kiba said, causing Inari's eyes to widen and Tenten to blush slightly. If anyone can get you from good to true expert with your bow, she can. Tenten hit a sigh as Inari performed the best puppy dog eyes no jutsu she had ever seen, even taking Akamaru at his cutest into account. Alright, we'll see what you can do once we stop for the evening. Yahoo! Naruto hurled a kunai at the intruder even before he woke up. His actions roused Hinata, who sleepily activated her Byakugan before leaping out of bed, landing in a Juho stance as Naruto prepared to deploy his clones. Not bad, kid. The intruder blocking the door laughed, twirling the kunai that Naruto had thrown. But it seems familiar for some reason. Jiraiya. Naruto sighed while Hinata, realizing that she was only wearing a light t-shirt and panties, eeped and dived behind the bed, grabbing her clothes as she did so. Knock next time. Jiraiya shrugged unrepentantly, then he grinned. I got the info we needed and we're gonna head out in 20 minutes. Get dressed and grab some food, cause we're going to be moving. As Jiraiya closed the door, Naruto reached out for his hakama. So, where are we off to? Naruto asked. Tanzaku quarters. Jiraiya grinned. If she isn't there now, she will be soon, based on what my contact said. I wonder if we'll have a chance to see the castle. Hinata mused as they took to the treetops. Did you know that the castle and its grounds take up about a quarter of the town? Or that almost a third of its inhabitants are poets or scribes? Jiraiya grinned. It's where my books get published. Ah, so it has a smut section. Hinata said innocently, timing the comment so that as Jiraiya turned to glare at her, he missed the branch he was aiming for and vanished into the undergrowth with a startled yelp. Naruto and Hinata halted on a branch and stared at the new hole in the lowest canopy. Haim, you have an evil sense of humor sometimes. She does indeed. Jiraiya grumped from behind them, causing them both to jolt in shock. What, you thought that something like that would get me? Oh, you caught me by surprise, but I've been the butt of worse jokes than that. Heck, Minato got me with a real doozy once, I'll tell you about it some other time. Come on, let's get going. As Jiraiya leapt off, Hinata and Naruto exchanged glances. I thought it was funny. Naruto offered. We shall camp here for the night. Guy proclaimed as he absently reached back with one hand to halt the wagon in the middle of the clearing. How does he keep going like that? Tazuna asked, staring at the spandex-clad Jonin. I mean, it normally takes 4 people to move a wagon that heavy, and they need to rest every hour or so. Gai-sensei is the premier taijutsu expert of Konoha. Niji supplied as he unsealed his tent and began assembling it. He is perhaps the only non-hyuga who has mastered the katas of Juken, although he cannot use it to its fullest extent. Niji paused, noting Tazuna's blank stare, and sighed. I guess that you have to know Konoha to know just how unprecedented that is, he said with a slight shrug. Guess so, Tazuna said with a matching shrug. So, this place looks familiar. Hey, it's my old sake bottle. Grandpa, are you starting to drink again? Inari half-shouted as Tazuna hefted the empty bottle. You know Mom doesn't like it when you drink. Nah, but it's a super funny story. Tazuna chuckled. You know that Roto's naturally invisible, right? Well, I didn't know that at the time, so when I saw a load of branches seem to float towards the fire pit there, I thought that the sake had finally got to me, and I poured it out there. I could have sworn that tree wasn't dead at the time though. Tanzaku Quarters, Jiraiya declaimed as they crested the ridge that had concealed the walled town. We made good time, so Tsunade should be here tonight or tomorrow. Good, Hinata stated. That means I get some time with my snuggly. I still have no clue how to respond to that, Jiraiya admitted after a long pause. Let's just get a couple of hotel rooms, and then I'll check my contacts here. Sounds like a plan. Naruto shrugged. I'll deploy my clones across the rooftops to keep watch. Your clones still freak me out somewhat, Jiraiya admitted. However, before you start making your personal army, I need to check that your seal has fully restabilized. I'll need you to recharge the visor first though. Sure, Naruto shrugged. Just as long as it doesn't cut too much into my snuggle time, Hinata added. Like you did before. Oh, come on, Jiraiya moaned. Just because I didn't realize that Naruto's invisible chakra would cause a problem, I had no way of knowing about. Pain-sama, Kisame said respectfully. Orochimaru has provided us with the location of the slug Sannin, Pain's image said. She is at a town called Tanzaku Quarters. I know that place, yeah, Deidara said with a wide grin. I had a mission there once. The whole town thinks it's devoted to art, but real art is a blast. Then by all means, feel free to enlighten them as to the true nature of art, Pain said before flickering out of existence. Deidara grunted as he unfolded himself from his meditative position. Man, those conversations leave me stiff, yeah. So, we running to Tanzaku? Give me a few minutes, yeah, Deidara said as he pulled out a bag from under his cloak and stuck his hand into it. That still kinda freaks me out, Kisame admitted, earning a disbelieving look. You have a spiky, living sword with a mouth of its own and you're freaked by my hands? Deidara asked archly. Yeah, I know, Kisame shrugged. So, how long before? Kisame paused as Deidara pulled his hand back out of the bag, making a fist, and then opening it to reveal a mouth set into his palm. The mouth opened and regurgitated a large amount of white clay which formed a large pile before it flexed and warped into a giant bird. We'll be there by midnight, yeah, Deidara exulted as he leapt onto the clay bird's back. A moment later, Kisame joined him and the bird launched itself skywards. Yeah, Kisame roared. I like this mode of transport. Well, that's it, Jiraiya said, removing the metal visor. The seal has fully integrated and should be usable again. Time to test it, Naruto said. Vaijutan, Kageyukai Bunshin. About time, a familiar voice complained from the resulting cloud of smoke. Ugh, it's boring being stuck in there, even with the link to your senses. Sorry, but I know, Kurama said with a wave of his paw. Modifying the seal and all that. You know, the 2 crystals are starting to crack. You may want to get in there and check on them tonight. Make sure that those new pipes lead to their arrays. What? Sorry. Jiraiya said, raising his hands to show he wasn't holding anything. I'm just surprised that you're offering help. It'll give me someone to talk to in there. Kurama shrugged. But for now, there's something really important that needs doing. All three humans exchanged glances in Kurama's side before leaping into Hinata's arms. I really need a belly rub. Please? Jiraiya facepalmed as Hinata started to caress Kurama's soft fur. I thought I'd seen everything. He mourned as Naruto started to laugh. Chapter 32. Naruto sat up in the bed, only for the arm that was wrapped around his chest to tighten and drag him back down. Hinata-heim. Naruto whispered. We need to get up. Don't wanna. Hinata mumbled, her arms tightening around him. Comfy. Don't wanna keep. Wanma snugly. We have a mission to do. Naruto replied, frowning as a sense of deja vu hit him. Don't care. Pillow comfy. Not gonna get up. Hinata groaned. An instant later, he vanished with a pop and Hinata found herself falling onto the mattress. Rolling over, she sat up and glared at Naruto. Clone Kawarimi again? She grumbled. It works. Naruto shrugged. One of my clones just popped, Tsunade has entered the town. Hinata yawned and pulled herself into a seated position. Ugh, it's too early. Several of my clones are following her. We need to get dressed and wake Aro-sanin. Hinata allowed herself to be pulled off the bed, grumbling quietly. She's in there? Jiraiya asked and Hinata, the veins around her eyes bulging as she used her Byakugan, nodded. She is. Third table in, having breakfast. She is with a slightly shorter, younger female. That would be Shizune, the niece of Kato-dan, Tsunade's deceased lover. Jiraiya supplied. She may look cute and innocent, but she's a skilled jonin and a fully trained medic nin with a subspeciality in poisons. There's also a pig with them. Hinata added and Jiraiya blinked. That is a new one on me. A pig. Huh. Oh well, I'm not getting any younger, although I am getting more handsome. Let's enter. Hinata and Naruto exchanged exasperated glances before following the white-haired man into the restaurant. Hey, Tsunade. Jiraiya. The blonde at the table spat, glaring at him. What are you doing here, getting more of your smut printed? I like her. Naruto whispered as Kurama, newly manifested and sprawled across his shoulders, raised his head to watch. Jiraiya spared him a glare before sitting down opposite Tsunade and motioning for the two Chunin to pull up more chairs. Who are the brats? Tsunade grumbled as she picked up her sake saucer and Jiraiya placed a seal on the table, channeling chakra into it. We're safe from being overheard now. He said as Tsunade glared at the inoffensive piece of paper. These two are Yuri Iruto and Hyuga Hinata. A clanless freak and a stuck-up bitch? Tsunade started to sneer before her head was suddenly propelled into the table. Ruto. No one calls my fiancé that. Naruto snarled as his clone slammed her head into the table again before dispelling. What the hell? Tsunade managed as she rubbed her forehead. How the hell did you just do that? I didn't see him do anything. Shizune whispered, staring at Naruto with wide eyes. What was that? Jiraiya nodded and Naruto pulled off his glove, then picked up the bottle of sake. Holy! Tsunade whispered, leaning in for a closer look. True invisibility? Is it a jutsu? Bloodlimit. Jiraiya replied and Tsunade turned her shocked gaze to him. Tested and confirmed, but he's the first generation with the Totan Kekkai Genkai. Naruto donned his glove again as Tsunade glanced at him and Hinata. Sleeping bird seal? Hinata nodded and Tsunade frowned in concentration. Are you invisible to dojutsu as well? To standard Byakugans and Sharingans, yes, but the Mangekyo can see me. Naruto said. A few of my clones were taken out by someone using the Rinnegan, so I think that it can see me as well. Interesting. Tsunade mused. That is one hell of a blood limit, it'll make getting medical treatment quite difficult. On the other hand, if it carries true, it'll increase Konoha's strength incredibly. And we'll need it. Jiraiya said, earning an inquisitive glance. Konoha got attacked last week. We've lost almost a third of our number. Sensei lost his arm. We need you back. And why should I? Tsunade asked, picking up her sake dish and refilling it. You know I have bad memories of Konoha. Maybe because the Hokage said that he would place you in the bingo book if you didn't return. Tsunade dropped the dish. Sensei would never do that. Sensei isn't the Hokage anymore. Jiraiya countered. The Godame Hokage Uchiha Itachi has sent me out with orders to find you and deliver his orders to you. You are to return to Konoha and take over running the hospital. Furthermore, you are to oversee the creation of a Mednin trainee program which will run in the academy, ensuring that all future teams have a Mednin capable of doing more than just wrapping bandages. Really? Jiraiya nodded slowly. It's time to come, what? Naruto rose to his feet, looking round as Hinata did the same. Someone just dispelled one of my sentry clones. Wow, what happened here? Tazuna asked, looking at the giant crater that was already starting to fill with water. An attack by an SS-ranked ninja. Itachi said grimly. Ideas? Tazuna cocked his head, looking at the waterfall where the river fed into the crater and the drying riverbed on the other side. I'd recommend putting anchor points in before it fills, maybe some foundations for pillars, then having some buildings on stilts and others on rafts. He finally said. If we build a bridge across to reconnect the two halves of the main road, it could also act as a hub for river traffic. A good thought. Itachi nodded. And the other project? After you sent me the plans for the foundations, I drew up the blueprints on my way here. Tazuna said, passing a roll of paper across. I have a team ready to begin construction, it should be finished within a week, less if we get help. You'll have at least one kunoichi willing to help. Itachi stated, then someone coughed behind him. You will have more than that. I have assigned just over half of the clan to aid in rebuilding Konoha. I will personally lead a half-dozen to aid in this project. With our eyes, you will not need to worry about faulty materials. Thank you, Hayashi-sama. Itachi said. I could do no less, Hokage-sama. Sentry clones? Jiraiya asked, standing up and canceling the seal. Yeah, a white spider landed on it and exploded. Naruto confirmed, then he frowned. And another has reported that several clones were just dispelled by someone using a wrapped sword, but I didn't get any memories back from them. What can cause the clones to not send their memories back? Hinata asked as she activated her Byakugan. Sounds like a chakra-draining jutsu. Jiraiya mused as he flexed his arms. Princess, time for you to get your game together. Tsunade nodded as she rose from her seat. How many do you think there are? 2. Hinata said quietly. One of them has a huge amount of chakra and is carrying something that is shaped a bit like a sword, but has almost as much chakra in it. Oh fuck. Jiraiya swore. That one sounds like Kisame. Outside. Now. Hinata screamed and Tsunade reacted by punching the wall, sending it into the street. As the ninja piled out, a blast of fire lanced down through the very spot where they had been standing. The hell? Jiraiya swore. That looked like an IWA explosion core-shaped charge. Art is a blast. Yeah. A voice exulted and everyone glanced up to see a blond man grinning down at them, his black and red cloak flapping dramatically in the aftermath of the explosion. "I know him," Jiraiya said slowly. "Deidara, Iwa Nuke Nin and former member of the Explosion Corps. Where's Kisame?" "Here." Another voice gloated from behind them, and Naruto reacted instantly, firing a nearly transparent chain at him. Kisame swung his wrapped sword to block it, and it seemed to absorb the chain before Naruto released the technique, shattering the links. "It absorbed my chakra chain. Samahata drains chakra." Kisame smirked. "Your chains and your Rasengan are useless against me." "Hey, I thought the dame we were after was a crone, yeah?" Deidara asked and Tsunade growled, her fists clenching. "You sure this is the one? She uses a genjutsu to look younger, but it's her." Kisame nodded. "May as well kill her friends too." Jiraiya looked at the two cloaked figures and growled. "Shizune, you take the kids and delay Deidara while Tsunade and I take out Kisame. This'll be fun." Kisame grinned, hefting his sword. "Witness my art, yeah." Deidara shouted, unleashing a barrage of pale kunai. "They're charged with chakra." Hinata shouted as she leapt into the air. "Kaiten." Hinata briefly vanished in a globe of chakra that was engulfed in flame as the kunai detonated against it, then she dropped out of the smoke, soot-streaked but uninjured. "You're good, but I'm better, yeah." "Whoa." Deidara leapt sideways as a chakra chain lanced through where he had been standing. Tsunade punched at the sword that Kisame was holding. Although the resulting blow sent him through the wall, the unexpected amount of pain in her hand caused her to look down at the blood flowing from the many scraped on her knuckles. "Tsunade? Tsunade. BL. Shit." Jiraiya cursed as he pulled the unresisting woman out of the way of a vertical slash that would have bisected her. "I hoped you'd overcome that damned phobia by now." "Oh, this is wonderful, she's scared of blood?" Kisame chortled, swinging Samahata horizontally and forcing Jiraiya RO retreat. "Well, I guess it's time to herk." Jiraiya blinked as Kisame reeled back, one hand rising to his throat, then a sandal-shaped depression briefly formed on his cheek, sending him staggering sideways. "Ha, another silent killing type, but one who uses an invisibility jutsu, huh?" Kisame grunted. "Let's even the playing field." Kirigakure no Jutsu. The entire world seemed to vanish in the swirls of mist and Jiraiya froze, then he bit his thumb before his hands flickered through a set of hand seals. Boar, dog, bird, monkey, ram. Kuchiyos no Jutsu. He whispered. Shizune landed on a rooftop just across from where Deidara stood. "Quick, what are your skills?" "I'm a Hyuga." Hinata whispered. "But I prefer to use Juho rather than Juken. Invisible clones, Rasengan and chakra chains, although I can only create one at a time and have difficulty controlling them." Naruto said. "I just sent a dozen clones to help Pervy Sage. I'm still working on the Hirosaki." Shizune glanced down briefly, frowning at the thick mist that was filling the streets. "The mist is like the one Zabuza used." Hinata growled. "I can't see through it." Dodge. The trio scattered bare instants before the roof they were on erupted in a column of flame. "Witness my performance." Deidara shouted from above and Shizune swore. "We'll never get him up there." "Ruto, his clay is mainly earth-natured." Naruto nodded and flung one hand up. The chain that lanced out, instead of being pale green, instead had a yellowish glow, and its tip pierced the clay bird. "What the? No." Deidara screamed as the bird disintegrated, causing him to plummet. Naruto paused just long enough to run through 5 hand seals before shedding his outer layer of clothing, vanishing from sight. Kisame spun, his sword slamming straight through the invisible figure that had disturbed the fog. The resulting cloud of chakra smoke was absorbed by Samahata and Kisame growled. "Where are? Gotcha." Lunging forwards, he slashed downwards, only for his sword to be caught in one hand. What the? Oomph, youngsters today, no sense of decorum. Are you saying I'm rude? No, the fish man over there. Kisame's eyes widened as he took in the details of the figure before him, the figure that was standing protectively over the shuddering figure of his target. Although it was recognizably Jiraiya, his nose had grown, warts had appeared on his face, and a goatee now adorned his chin, while the red line under his eyes had expanded to cover almost half his face. In addition, a small, wrinkled toad was perched on each shoulder. What are frogs? Toads. Jiraiya corrected him. You remember my title? Kisame swallowed as a sense of foreboding filled him. The toad. Sage, oh hell. Jiraiya grinned and brought his other hand up, a Rasengan forming in it. Oh crap. Kisame muttered as he failed to extract Samahata from Jiraiya's grasp. How are you doing that? Deidara screamed as the young girl he had stuck an explosive spider onto seemed to vanish an instant before the spider exploded, reappearing unscathed a couple of rooftops away. A blast aimed at the other woman seemed to engulf her, only for her to appear on his other side, spinning to face him again. No one's that fast. Deidara growled angrily. I'll turn you into art yet, yeah. A rattling of loose roofing tiles was his only warning, but it was enough that he was able to dodge just enough, taking the attack on his shoulder rather than the back of his neck. The impact threw him across the roof, and as he landed, he gritted his teeth against the pain in his shoulder. You're going to pay for that. He shouted, then he froze as a trio of invisible blades pierced his torso. Art is a blast. He whispered as his color drained away. Katsu. Thank goodness for suicide clones. Deidara whispered, staring almost hungrily at the smoky flames and scattered wreckage left behind by his technique. Now to find them and finish them off. Thank goodness for Totan Bunshin. Naruto said, causing Hinata and Shizune to nod in agreement. Now, let's find that bastard and take him down. Hinata and I can hold him, you get Tsunade somewhere safe, like the basement of the castle. I'll leave a couple of dozen clones to help you. Naruto replied. Kisame growled as he punched out another of the damned invisible attackers, then turned as the easily recognizable chakra source that was Jiraiya landed behind him. Abandoned your friend at last? He sneered. Well, I just have to hold you for Deidara to do his work. Jiraiya growled, then crouched, showing that his already long hair had somehow grown longer and was pointing forwards. Senpo, Kibari Senbon. Kisame swore as he frantically retreated from the sudden storm of Senbon-like hair that was being launched at him, using Samahata as a shield to block as much of the attack as possible. Spotting a side passage, he dived into it, wincing as the hair projectile slashed into the wall, sending chunks of it flying. The hell was that? He muttered to himself as he let Samahata heal his injuries. He attacked me with his hair? Deidara smirked as he sent his second clone after the slug Sannin, having managed to catch a glimpse of her being carried into the castle. Then he released a flock of exploding clay birds, directing them towards the Kunoichi duo attacking him. To his shock, the birds were ripped to pieces by the younger ninja, her hands blurring in a pattern that he had never seen before. My birds! He shouted angrily. You'll pay for that. The hell is he shouting about now? Kisame mused, glancing upwards. You should be concentrating on me. Jiraiya snarled from behind him and Kisame started to turn, but he wasn't fast enough. Rasengan! Kisame screamed as the chakra sphere dug into his torso, then he slammed into the ground and everything went dark. Ouch. Kisame mused as he slowly stood from his meditation position. I'll have to be more careful if I ever encounter Jiraiya in person, he's on a whole other level. I hope Deidara manages without me. Stretching, Kisame reached into his cloak and pulled out a small box, opening it to reveal a bed of steamed rice topped with shrimp and crab meat. May as well eat while I'm waiting. What the hell? Jiraiya said in shock as he looked at the corpse embedded into the ground. That's not Kisame, what the hell is going on? An explosion caught his attention and he looked up, as did the two toad elders on his shoulders. Sounds like there's still work to be done. You got that right, Fukasaku-sama. Jiraiya said grimly. Are you both with me? Of course we are. The other toad said fondly. The sooner you finish, the sooner we can have dinner. Jiraiya nodded, then leapt up to the rooftops. He just keeps firing those damned exploding birds. Shizune swore as she leapt out of the path of 3 of the winged bombs. How are we meant to beat him? I don't know. Hinata growled, her Byakugan activated. He's tough. Prepare to become art, Yeerk. Deidara struggled against the vice-like grip on his neck, then Jiraiya jerked his hands and Deidara went limp before his body seemed to distort. Again. Jiraiya swore, staring at the corpse that he was holding. How the hell do they do that? Where's Tsunade-sama? Shizune asked urgently and Jiraiya smiled. I had Ruto take her into the castle to hide. Shizune looked at the towering edifice, then her face turned white as the entire structure was engulfed in a giant explosion. Lady Tsunade. Naruto. Jiraiya stared in horror at the falling wreckage. No. 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 That hurt, yeah, but I got the bitch. Deidara stated as he slumped out of his meditation pose. My clone turned her into art. I saw. Kisame said approvingly as he descended from the small hill that gave him a view of Tanzuka quarters. That was quite an explosion. Yeah. I got the slug princess and that invisible kid. Kisame froze in sudden horror. Deidara, you do realize that the invisible kid is the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, right? Oh shit. Oh, Pain-sama is going to be pissed if you've killed him before the Kyuubi can be extracted. Kisame groused. You'd better hope he survived. Deidara swallowed nervously. Maybe we should take our time going back. That may be a good idea. Kisame nodded. No sign of them. Hinata sobbed and Jiraiya carefully pulled her into a comforting hug. We managed to save quite a few people. He offered, glancing over to where Shizune was helping to heal the survivors they had pulled out of the wreckage. Her expression showed that she was trying to ignore her sorrow by concentrating completely on the task in hand, something that would only work for so long. Once things are under control, we'll all head back to Konoha. Jiraiya added. Naruto deserves the best damned memorial I can make for him. Hinata nodded, tears still flowing down her cheeks. The best damned memorial. Jiraiya repeated quietly. The best. Chapter 33. Konoha. Jiraiya said in an emotionally drained voice as the trio, and Pig, walked listlessly towards the gates to the hidden village. God knows how I'm going to explain this. Explain what? A voice asked and Hinata's head shot up, staring at the figure standing in front of them. Her Byakugan activated briefly, then she seemed to teleport forwards, impacting the figure so hard that the collision carried them 5 feet before they hit the ground. Ruututu. She half shouted, half cried as she buried her head into his chest. You're alive. So am I, said another voice, and it was Shizune's turn to teleport, glomping Tsunade so hard that they briefly parted contact with the earth before slamming onto the ground. Lady Tsunade. You're alive. How? Jiraiya whispered. How are you? Alive? Tsunade asked and Jiraiya nodded, unable to speak. You can thank Ruto. Shizune, let me up. Let's get you to the Hokage's office, and then we can tell you how we survived. How? Jiraiya repeated, a huge grin forming on his face. You're alive. Unnoticed, a black and white figure withdrew into the tree it was leaning out of. Welcome back, Jiraiya-sama, Hinata-chan, Shizune-san. Itachi smiled as the group entered his office. As you can see since you were last here, Shizune, we made a few changes. It's a tree. Shizune said in shock. Well, we are the village hidden in the leaves, Itachi said, earning several looks, then Hinata frowned. Sensei, your eyes. Itachi held out a hand and Shursui appeared, dropped a small bundle of Ryo into it and vanished again. Hinata raised a querying eyebrow. We had a bet as to who'd notice Tsunade's handiwork first. Shursui managed to cure my phobia using his Mangekyo. Tsunade shrugged, attracting their attention. You're looking at the chief medic and administrator of Konoha Hospital, and the personal physician of the Hokages. That's nice. Hinata said absently, her attention still fixated on Itachi's eyes. What happened? Itachi activated his Sharingan, then the tomos warped and flowed into new shapes. His left eye boasted a three-bladed shuriken with a red circle in which a four-bladed shuriken resided, while his right eye had a three-bladed shuriken with a trio of overlapping ellipses in the middle. To enable us to protect Konoha better, Shursui, Sasuke, and I all went through a special medical procedure. Itachi said. My left eye used to be Shursui's while my brother gave me my new right eye. Oh, Camus above. Jiraiya gasped. You have the eternal Mangekyo. As do Shursui and Sasuke. Itachi confirmed. Shursui has my right eye while Sasuke has my left. And Sasuke has Shursui's right eye while Shursui has Sasuke's left. Shizun realized. A three-way swap. That is correct. Itachi confirmed. I decided that with the amount of damage Konoha's forces took, having two fully powered-up Sharingans available for missions would be a highly valuable asset. 2. Naruto asked. The Hokage generally has to remain in Konoha. Tsunade said with a slight shrug. As does the chief medic. Right now, having Itachi and myself here means that we are very unlikely to be attacked again, leaving you lot ready for deployment. Except for you, Shizun. The paperwork's already piling up, and I need your help with it. Wait. Hinata snapped. Ruto-kun, you owe us an explanation. Okay. Naruto laughed as he fished around in his kunai pouch, before pulling out a three-bladed kunai. Watch. Naruto flung the kunai across the room, then vanished in a flash of pale gold, reappearing just by where the kunai was quivering in the pillar. You used the Hiroshin. Jiraiya breathed and Naruto shrugged. Sort of. I actually summoned Shiromari and asked him to travel to Konoha via Mount Maya Boko to ask the Hokage's guard to get ready. He thought it would take him about 10 minutes, so I waited 15 minutes before dropping this kunai to summon the guard, and they used their Hiroshin to bring us back to Konoha. From the report you sent ahead, I think we got out just as Deidara's technique took out the castle. Anyway, Shiromari said the other chameleons were curious about the Hiroshin, so I sent him back with a copy of the scroll, and the next day, I was reverse summoned to the Valley of Mists where I met the great chameleon sage, who had read the scroll and worked out how the Hiroshin worked. Apparently, the key is in the exact ratio of yin and yang chakra, which is probably why Jiraiya-sama can't do it. That would make sense. Jiraiya admitted ruefully. I never expected that replacing half my yang chakra with spirit toad essence would bar me from using my student's technique. So, how did you do it? The great chameleon sage used his Fuinjutsu skills to give me a special seal that does most of the work for me. Naruto admitted with a shrug. All I really had to do was to learn how to work with the new sense it gave me and Hiroshin complete. I've agreed to let the chameleons use it too since they were responsible for me gaining the ability to do it. Fuinjutsu. Jiraiya half laughed. Oh wow. Why didn't I think of that? The great chameleon sage is one of the oldest beings around. Naruto said. He was a fully grown warrior in the time before the Sage of the Six Paths. His knowledge of Fuinjutsu is, if I used 100 clones daily to learn without taking a break, it would probably still take me over a century to get close. Jiraiya whistled. And did they help you with your chains as well? Hinata asked. No. Naruto sighed. They said I simply needed to practice, practice and practice. Practice makes perfect. Jiraiya intoned, trying to look wise. Tsunade rolled her eyes. You failed. Tsunade still lives. What? Deidara yelped. But I blew up the castle. It was a masterpiece of art. How did she survive? Kisame interrupted. We do not know at this time, but what we feared has come to pass. Pain's image stated. It is no longer worth trying to kill her. And the Kyuubi Jinchuriki? He survived as well, you did not kill him. Pain replied. Although certain portions of the plan need to be rethought, the plan as a whole is still underway. Is this? Hinata gasped as they walked in through the outer gate, and she saw the building for the first time. Our new home. Naruto aid, giving her a one-armed hug as he stood beside her. Hinata stared entranced at the mansion set in its own gardens. The central portion stood 3 stories tall, with a small windmill at the peak, and 2 wings arced out to partially enclose the entry courtyard. We have training grounds at the back and all of our scrolls and similar have been placed into the vault underneath. Naruto said. It's a super building. Tazuna said as he wandered up, looking proudly at the mansion. I designed it specifically for you too. I even added a full onsen and the windmill pumps water for your own private bathroom. It's really cool. Inari added as he ran to his grandfather's side. Guest rooms, a huge hall, kitchens, the lot. But how can we? Hinata started before the door opened and a young woman in a maid's outfit appeared. Welcome to the Urei mansion, Lady Hinata. She bowed. I am Tsuchi-kin and I have the honor of being the chief maid. She's a former kunoichi who took a career-ending injury. Naruto whispered and Hinata nodded slightly in understanding. I'm planning on hiring several other former ninja to help keep this place going. Do you wish for a tour? Kin asked politely. What? A house. Hinata sighed as she collapsed onto the bed. Naruto finished hanging up the last of the tri-blade kunai on the display wall before joining her. Hayashi-sama wants to meet with us tomorrow. Naruto said as he sat down and captured one of Hinata's hands. Several of the branch family are interested in joining the staff of the house, helping to look after the place while we're on missions. Hinata sighed contentedly, then giggled. I still can't believe that you gave Hanabi her own guest room. It's not like she'll be over every night, maybe once or twice a week. Naruto shrugged. Besides, once the great chameleon sage gives you the chakra flow seal and instructs you on how to use the Hiroshin, you'll be able to simply pop back whenever you want. Hinata hummed in contented agreement as Naruto continued to gently stroke her hand. We'll never be apart again. He whispered to her softly. Little brother. Hokage and I-san. Sasuke grinned back and Itachi's lips quirked in a brief smile. How are you finding your apprenticeship? Well, Sasuke began, I miss my old team. Sure, Sakura was a pain until Kurenai-sensei put her straight in Shino. I think he talked less than I did while I was going through my emo phase, but now that I only see them every so often, I find that I do miss them. That being said, I've learned more from Hirozen-sensei in a week than I have previously in a month or more. There is a reason that he is known as the professor. Itachi confirmed. How are you adjusting to your new eyes? I need to work on my chakra reserves. Sasuke groaned. These new powers are amazing, but they go through chakra faster than a starving Akamichi through a buffet. Itachi nodded and Sasuke blinked at the sudden burst of light just outside the window. What was that? Kumo collecting our reports on Akatsuki. Itachi said without bothering to look round. So far, we are gaining as much information as we are disseminating, and so we have a better idea of what, or whom, we are facing, although we still do not know their ultimate aim. Probably world domination. Sasuke sighed. We need to get stronger. All of us. I have ordered the cost of learning from the public Uchiha archive to be reduced to a tenth of what it was. Itachi stated. That will help. Sasuke admitted. It's always useful to have a jutsu or two that the enemy doesn't expect. Indeed. For a long moment, the two of them looked out of the newly glazed window, their gazes resting on the areas of Konoha that were still being rebuilt. By the way, Itachi asked, when do you wish to undertake the training trip to Kumo in order to study Kenjutsu under Killer Bee? I want to study, without a doubt / have a chance to try my new sword out. Go to Kumo and earn my grades / under the Master of the Seven Blades. But I gotta raise my game while I'm still here / so maybe I'll go to him next year. Word. For a long moment, Itachi stared disbelievingly at his grinning brother, then he face-bombed. You were only friends for a week. How did he corrupt you that fast? Sasuke burst into laughter. Father. Gaara stated, and the Kazekage looked up from his desk. Gaara. Is the seal holding? It is. Gaara droned, then his tone hardened slightly. Having a proper seal to restrain the Ichibi has allowed me to interact more with my peers. The Kazekage flinched slightly at the reminder of how he'd come within a whisker's breadth of completely ruining his son's life. I summoned you here to give you this. The Kazekage said, nodding to Baki, who produced a Chunin vest. Gaara accepted it and held it up, examining it. Why? Because with the help that Jiraiya gave you, you have proven yourself. The Kazekage replied. You managed to defeat Suigetsu, and during the invasion of our allies, you saved dozens of lives. You will still remain on the same team as your siblings though. That is good, I have learned how to work with them. Gaara noted. And although it is not usual to do this, I am placing you in charge as I need Baki for other duties. The Kazekage added, and Gaara's eyes widened fractionally. You trust me that much? I probably trust you far more than you trust me. The Kazekage replied with a slight twitch of his lips. Dismissed, Chunin. Gaara nodded and walked out of the room. Thank you, sir. Baki said quietly. I hope that in a few years, I will be able to follow my friend Hiruzen's example and retire. The Kazekage said. If Gaara continues to improve as he has done, I think he will be able to take this damned hat within the next 5 years or so. Gaara blinked as the small sandeer that he had almost absent-mindedly placed in the office relayed the discussion to him. Gaara, the fifth Kazekage. He mused. Gaara. Gaara turned and his lips quirked in a brief smile that could only be noticed by one who knew him. Temari. I just heard. Temari grinned. Congratulations. Thank you. Haku, Suigetsu. Front and center. Zabuza snarled and the two genin darted forwards to stand before the Mizukige's desk. Behind it, Mei leaned back in her chair and steepled her fingers. You both did very well against your opponents. Haku, you managed to defeat a Hyuga, not something that is easily done. Suigetsu, you held your own for a while against a Jinchuriki. As such, and taking your actions during the invasion into account, I am confirming you both as Chunin. Mangetsu stepped forwards and presented them with their Chunin jackets, giving his younger brother an approving smirk. I'll be watching you. Zabuza growled. Just because you've been promoted don't mean you can slack off. Mei giggled as she reached out to stroke Zabuza's arm. Darling, let them enjoy this day. It's not every day that one gets promoted, after all. Fine. Zabuza sighed, then he caught the look in Mei's eyes. You three scram. Go find something to do now. The two freshly minted Chunin and the co-leader of the Seven Swordsmen darted out through the door as Mei rose from her chair. You know, she whispered into Zabuza's ear, we have yet to christen this office. There aren't any curtains, Mei. Mei whispered into Zabuza's ear and he nodded with a lopsided grin. As you command, Mizukige Heim. Kirigakure no Jutsu. Omoi, Samui. said as he leaned back in his chair, absently lifting a pair of seal-engraved dumbbells. Well done, you're promoted. B. I'm so proud I could almost cry / so full of joy I could reach the sky. Your Chunin vests, well here you go / you're now the pride of all Kumo. I knew a promotion would come your way / and here you are Chunin today. Word. Enough rapping, B. A roared. You too, well done. Now go and celebrate, 'cause tomorrow you're gonna be working your asses off. Hi, Reikage-sama. Thank you for your hard work, all of you. Itachi said as he faced the crowd of builders from Wave. The least we could do since you rescued us from Gato and delivered him to us. Tazuna said with a grin. Sides, if Tsunami had heard you wanted help with building and I hadn't volunteered. Tazuna gave an exaggerated shudder, causing most of the builders to laugh. The bridge you built over Sharingan Lake is a work of art. Itachi said. As are the floating houses that you designed. Well, if there's one thing I know above everything else, it's bridges. Tazuna shrugged, then he glanced across at the tower tree. Though buildings formed from weird ninja magic are a new one on me. And to us as well. Itachi agreed. Team 10 will escort you and your men back to Wave. Did you say something? Kakashi asked from his perch on the wall where he was reading an Ika book. Itachi merely lifted an eyebrow and briefly activated his Mangekyo. Okay, Team 10 is ready to move out. Kakashi said hurriedly, quickly stowing the book in his pocket. How? Hiruzen whispered from his position just behind Itachi. I threatened to use Amaretsu on his books if he ever showed up late again. Itachi whispered back. It seemed to work. You mean that all I had to do to get him to show up on time was to threaten his books? Hiruzen gasped, then he face-bombed. Now I know I'm getting old. Hinata and Naruto stood on the wall beside the gate, watching Tazuna and his workers vanishing into the distance. I'll miss him. Hinata sighed, then she frowned. Ruto, why are you being quiet like that? Like what? Like you have something to tell me, but are waiting because you think it's funny. Hinata replied. Tell. Okay. I gave Inari a carving to put on a shelf, the insignia of the Urei clan. It contains a Hiratian tag. So we can visit them whenever we want. Hinata realized. Brilliant. Well, once you get the seal applied so that you can learn it as well. Naruto nodded, then he made a quick hand seal, causing 2 clones of Kurama to appear. What? I thought that you'd want to go and visit Hanabi and talk to Inoichi. Naruto explained. That's why I summoned 2 clones, so that you could do both. The 2 Kuramas looked at him, then at each other for a long moment. Jankenpon? Jankenpon. Hinata started to giggle as the 2 nine-tailed foxes began playing paper-scissors-stone to decide which one got the belly rubs. Damn it. You win. Excellent, I get the rubs. You realize that original you will get all the memories anyway? Hinata pointed out between giggles. Oh, that reminds me. Naruto said, and he quickly ran through a few hand seals, causing 2 people to appear behind him. Hinata, the alterations Jiraiya made worked. I'd like you to meet my parents. Mom, Dad, this is Hinata. Hinata found herself being embraced by the red-haired women. Oh, she's so cute. Mom. With a long drawn-out creak, the tree slowly toppled over, landing in such a way that it straddled the stream that it had been growing beside. The long-toothed animal that had been responsible for the tree's demise waddled round the jagged stump, then it seemed to freeze and collapse, a small bit of wood with fletching attached sticking out of its forehead. Yes. Inari exulted as he ran over and picked up the deceased mammal. This is going to be perfect for Mum's new hat when we get home. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.